All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Huskers Happy Hour. And I don't have my drink set aside. Oh well, we'll power through this. I think I've got one hidden back there somewhere. But anyway, here we are. I am living proof that anyone can have a podcast, and if I've got one, probably anybody does. But that's not important tonight. You know what? It's the comments just keep getting more and better every single week. So I want to do one night where I'm gonna give you a little introduction, and then I'm just gonna see how far the comments take us tonight. I don't know if it's a bad sign or not, but we didn't actually have anyone declaring they were number one, seeing the show posted on YouTube, the scheduled or whatever. All I had to start out was somebody called Krager I7Q, and he just was here to say, unless this is John, you goofy bastards aren't giving us any news. So this isn't John. It's never been John. Well, John's been on this show. He was on a couple weeks ago. But if you're talking about the website, man, we are giving you plenty of news right now. We really are. Today wasn't the busiest day. I think we had our morning flakes, and then everybody kind of took the day off. Yeah, I did a bunch of tweeting. I was down at the press conference today. Got some definite news there. It's kind of funny, and I think I know what's going on. It just didn't occur to ask Matt or Keith, the communications director, until later. But what I thought it was kind of funny that we get official notices that Donovan Raiola was let go. First, we got official notice that John Butler was let go, and we found out that I'm already forgetting his name. Is it Rick Orich, the new defensive coordinator, and then not really forgetting our new offensive line coach's name. That's Geep. I believe I think it'd be better as Jeep, but I believe it's Geep Wade. But we've never gotten the official notice, hey, we'd like to announce the signing of so-and-so. I'm betting what's going on is we have they're not joining the staff mid-bowl season. So probably what's happening is they'll make the official announcements after Georgia Tech's played their bowl game and San Diego State's played their bowl game. They probably don't officially transition over till after those teams are done. They're staying with them through the bowl season. And boy, it's like we can certainly talk about what a wacky bowl season it's going to be. But oh no, Notre Dame. Gosh, it's not like, well, at least I'm going to be making a lot of fun of you guys tonight. Guys, Karen wants to talk to the manager. She really, really does. When you are the most entitled program in the history of college sports, finally not getting special allowances made or getting your way just because it hurts. It has to you can tell from the reactions, it's just pure outrage. And I was listening to the Joel Klatt show today. I'll just talk about this real quick. And he was making some pretty good points. He was saying, in their heart of hearts, Notre Dame, I think, doesn't believe they belong in. They just hate the way the process went, that they were rated ahead of Miami until Miami pulled up next to them in the rankings, and then the committee flipped them on the head-to-head. And I couldn't have disagreed more strenuously. Of course, they know in their heart of hearts, for all those years they'd go to a New Year's Day bowl or a BCS game or the CFP until last year and just get throttled. But they were Notre Dame, and it was just assumed you want us. So that it wasn't. This reaction isn't because they think they got screwed or that they really deserve to be there. They just believe they should have been in that playoff because, by God, they're Notre Dame, and you guys always bend over backwards to bring us in. There was always allowances made for not being in a conference. Remember some in the early college football playoffs, the TCU and Baylor get bounced back because the Big 12 didn't have a title game, and that was the explicit reason for jumping Ohio State 3 spots up over them after Ohio State had been behind, because there was nothing amazing. I think Ohio State beat a pretty average 8-4 Wisconsin team in the championship game, but the reasoning there, got to play in a championship game. Unless you're Notre Dame, Notre Dame, you're fine. You don't have to do that. And so they don't. It had always just been, and if Notre Dame, if you do this, and now there's a special allowance, I believe, next year that Notre Dame, it's like along with the top 5 conference winners, and I'll agree that's too many, but I've had to explain to a bunch of people, and I could have been explaining it because some Notre Dame fans think that honestly 2 group of 5 teams got selected ahead of them, so they're triple pissed. It's like, no, they changed it this year. They got rid of the top 4 conference champions get in and get top 4 seeds. That was stupid. So they got rid of that, but then they said the top 5 get in regardless of conference. And in their hubris, it never occurred to them that 4 of those spots wouldn't go every year to the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the ACC. It did not occur to them that that any of those, that it would ever be 2 group of 5 teams, or I guess we just call them less than power. Might as well call them less than power 4 teams. Never occurred to them. So here that was. So all of a sudden you got 2 group of 5s in at 11 and 12. Thank you, Duke. It still would have been Virginia and 1 group of 5 teams. Virginia would have beaten 7 and 5 Duke in that championship game. And now I think they're going back now and wanting to strangle the ACC for a tiebreaker system that allowed Duke to get into the title game ahead of Miami. I think they were all part of that tie, and you can bet that'll be amended by next year. But then Duke goes and beats Virginia in overtime, and then all hell's breaking loose, because now, before that, you could have left Alabama, found a way to leave Alabama and Notre Dame in, and the 2 screamingest fan bases will both be assuaged. Like, you remember last year, Bama went nuts when they lost 3. So this year's rule was you shouldn't be punished for making a title game that other teams didn't make. Although it was really, you shouldn't be punished if you're Alabama and make a title game and get beat by 21, but you can be punished if you're BYU and make a title game and lose by 24. Apparently that was a big, big difference. So anyway, at the end of the day, I believe Alabama either dropped 1 or not at all, but they stay in. They flipped that it was Miami at 11, Notre Dame at 10. Only the top 10 are getting in. So they flip Miami for good reason. I mean, yes, it's goofy when they are like back behind them, climbing up, as they take their 2 losses, but come back. But by most of the team metrics, I mean, some people tried to cherry pick a few games here and there. Well, they did this against these teams, and Notre Dame did this against these teams. So Notre Dame really is the better team. But if you looked at it was like exact same record. The strength of schedule, I think, was like 45th and 46th. It was very close. Neither of them were very strong, but they were very close. Everything was very close. But what you want to do is put that best team in, right? And we had a head-to-head. We have something that beats all those metrics. They had actually met on the field. Miami won. And you get teams that lose a game early that somehow think that part of the regular season doesn't count. Sorry, it does. They were more ready than you at that time. That shouldn't just be discounted because it happened earlier in the season. Why weren't you as ready as they were? Blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame doesn't get in. The howls are still being heard. It was kind of funny because I tweeted the little gif of the Bad News Bears remember after they get slaughtered by the Yankees, I think they have a team vote, we're quitting. And Buttermaker was like, all right, get out on the field. What are you talking about? But we voted. He just throws like a beer against the wall of the dugout and says, nobody's goddamn vote counts around here but mine. Notre Dame really needed a guy like that. Instead, what they got, because what they were super emotional 18 to 23-year-olds, super emotional. But unfortunately, they had an AD that was acting like a super emotional 10-year-old. I mean, his little conference, his little press release was just a pouting 10-year-old child. And even threw in there, the team has decided not to play, but we'll come back next year and bring a championship back to South Bend. My first thought was, okay, they want to bring a championship back next year, and the first step they're going to take is to piss away 15 extra practices. I'm guessing the entire roster is not coming back, or all the starters aren't coming back. I'm guessing players without much experience will be taking on bigger roles next season, as happens every year. And because we talked a lot about the damage done to Nebraska by missing out on 15 practices a year for 12 years, something like that, 11 years or 10 years. And, that's 150 more practices. Other teams that went to bowls consistently got over Nebraska. It adds up. And one guy tried to come back. Naturally, it had to be an insult to Nebraska because I'm doing the Corn Nation post. Well, maybe you guys need the practices, Notre Dame doesn't. And no, I didn't even really. I sassed back, but then others were coming in going like, well, maybe if you had a few more practices, you would have finished 10th and not 11th, huh? Ha ha, Notre Dame. But instead, quit when things don't go my way. And then there's also a bit of pettiness in there, in that they didn't like the way things were done, and it's being done on the championship show, or the committee show being broadcast on ESPN, and they're kind of referring to that other network, and they're like, well, if they're going to do this to us, like it was just ESPN that did it to them, and I don't think ESPN has somebody in the room stating ESPN's case of what they like. Now, it looks bad because ESPN owns the SEC network, owns the ACC network. I myself say, there's times just sheerly for money, you're going to see ESPN try to put their thumb on the scale when they can to get the teams that are making them money in there. And, it's like the Big Ten network operates free of ESPN. That's independent. But ESPN did, ESPN was the ones who did the Longhorn network. And boy, that really worked out for the Big 12. And then they run the ACC and SEC network. So naturally that upsets Notre Dame. Notre Dame also got very upset with the ACC for pushing Miami for that spot. Oh my God, how can you do that? Well, because you don't want to play in that conference. Yeah, we get it. You're in every other sport there, but you've refused to be part of their football conference, and yet you're mad that they were pushing a team in their football conference for that spot. I don't know that had, I believe in that room. It seems like things aren't quite as dirty as they have been, although letting Alabama in, very questionable. But I think they go in there knowing, of course, the conferences are screaming for their bubble teams. I don't think that's like, oh my God, guess what? The ACC wants an ACC team in that last spot. We better do it. We better do it. I didn't know the conference was going to back their own team, guys. ACC team in, because of course that had nothing to do with it. But you got the feeling they were taking a little shot at ESPN. Well, we're not going to help them make money off of us, and they get their own chunk of change that by not being in a conference, they get to keep it all instead of splitting it with the conference, which is a little money thing they have now. As it turns out, the money they make from NBC, which used to be a big boost over others, well, now, I think the Big Ten teams are getting about $50 million a year, if not more, at this point each year from the Big Ten network, which is more than NBC's paying Notre Dame by themselves. So it's not that big advantage. They just don't like being told what to do. It's Notre Dame, it's the Catholic Church, that they don't want others dictating how they run things, especially at Notre Dame. And we'll talk more about that. Feel free to abuse them. Feel free to defend them. I guess you see where I'm going to stand, and I'm just finding it hysterical just because of the way college football has just humped their leg, bent over backwards to make sure they're getting advantages other teams don't, without having, while still being independent. And then finally, I just assumed they were getting in. I told my Notre Dame friends, my Notre Dame fan friends, said, I don't see a way that Notre Dame's not in this. They have never, ever pushed them aside. It's always Notre Dame dictating. Well, they didn't used to go to bowl games. I want to say through the 70s, they did not do bowl games, and they acted like, we don't want to be a part of this money grubbing, even though they paid players like everybody else. I never said Notre Dame's dirtier than anybody else. They're just as dirty as anybody else and always have been. But then they'd try to do that thing. Well, we don't want to go to the bowl games and be part of that money. Well, but what it does is, if they're ranked number one at the end of a lot of regular seasons, and then they just get to sit back, watch everyone else play a bowl game, and then regardless, they end up number one. 1966 was the funnest year ever for that. That was when they tied Michigan State when they were both 9-0, number one, or 8-0 and number one. And Notre Dame gets the ball back on about their own 40 with a minute and a half left, just starts running it into the line. It's apparent. We're going to kick back. We're number one right now. They're number two. We're going to kick back and take this tie. and then they finished the season, I think 9-0-1 or something like that, and they're number one, and then they don't go to a bowl game, so they leave them at number one. And Bear Bryant, he went like Alabama went, I think 12-1 that year or something, or 11-1 or 12-0. And Bear Bryant had the best comment when they finished second in the rankings, and he goes, "Oh hell, I guess I should be grateful." He goes like that, it's like, but they are number one, and all I got's the best football team in the country. And so, that you couldn't get. It was tough to beat Bear Bryant on dry, pissed off humor at times. But anyway, let's get going into your comments. We'll talk more about the CFP. Myself, I kind of enjoy the chaos. I enjoy the parody. And let's just see where the evening takes us here. And I left oh great, I left the F-bomb up there for like my 10-minute rant there, 15-minute rant. Okay, let's see what we got. Fred's greeting. He said he had to get the pizza, the Christmas shot to the Christmas shop, then beers. Now he's here. He's second. All right, whoever was saying John, if it's not John, I'm not giving enough info, before the show started. Then I guess that's number one. Yep, James Boardman, Notre Dame quits. I thought Catholics never pull out. And we're off. And we are off. Oh, let's see. Do I actually have stuff for this? I might. I was hoping I had one of those. Well, let's see. We got a drum roll. Okay, that's not quite the badumpus I like, but hey, we're trying for you. So let's see what we got. Let's keep going here. We've got Catholic jokes already. I remember one time I made a crack. I think last year I made a crack when Penn State was playing Notre Dame, and I called it the Pedo Bowl. And somebody came back and said, "Why, way to insult an entire religion?" And I was like, "So you guys are all pro pedo?" Because I'm kind of okay with insulting that. I think I was just making fun of the pedo end of things. And then I got a note from John, "Stop bringing religion into it." and I guess I just did that again. Everyone will survive if they know this show. Yep, the zing, Fred Boardman, zing, play like a pullout today. And Jeep Wade. I wish that'd be great if it was actually a J, huh? Yeah, I don't know. Jeeps are kind of crappy. But I think it's Geep. There's one thing I love. It's the fact that I never take advantage of the Husker site's name pronunciation thing, where you can go on the roster, hit someone's name, and you'll hear them. That's how I learned that it wasn't Peter Zach, it was Petchak, for Cade Petchak, the fantastic freshman lineman. One that in a year, if we had a huge line, that maybe we get to redshirt him. Instead, Cade plays in every game, and he was good, but just he's like 260, 265 right now. And I think I heard somewhere the goal is they want our edges. I think this guy coming in might be a 4.3 guy, and they want our edges at about 270. Carricker, I believe Carricker was a massive edge. Wasn't he about 290 when he was playing defensive end? And I think they nicknamed him Drago, and it just looked like a freaking just wrecked polar bear, not polar bear, like just a wrecked grizzly bear coming off the edge. But yeah, they're definitely looking to big up the line. Let's see. Oh boy, is this actually true, Fred? Gideon Pillow Wade the Fourth. Pillow's his middle names, aka Geep. So if it's Gideon, I'm going Geep. It's odd, whatever it is, just build a damn offensive line with a name like that. That's a good start. Let me see if I can get. Well, while we're on the subject, let's wait till we get to the DC. Then I'll bring up some of their numbers here on my split screen. But they both had really good years. And Orich, the only thing that kind of has the heads cocked a little is the fact that last year was his first year as a defensive coordinator, and it was at San Diego State. I think he jumped them way up. It was something like took him from like 90th in total defense in the country to 6th. So it ruled today. He didn't specify names, but he did say that he got references from, friends very high in the game that he trusts that pretty much told him, grab this guy. So, let's hope it works out here. Let's see. And we got, okay. Is there another team out there comparable to Big Red in terms of fan expectations and team results? I'm not feeling so good about Nebraska. And here's the thing is once again, I go to, let's see, I might even have a shot here, or did I bring that in? Yeah. I wonder if it still comes down to that, to the Signetti effect, because it wasn't quite, but let's face it, this is the best 3-year run a coach has had since Bo Pelini, if not on the same level that Bo always did it with 9 or more wins. But he came in 5-7, flipped that to 7-6, and right now we're 7-5 again. And we can probably blame it a little on Dylan's injury, but whatever, injuries happen, and you've got to adjust. But now people are calling like disaster, like almost like at the level of Frost and Riley. It's like, and what we still had is 3 years of improvement. Now next year the schedule potentially toughens up some. I think we get Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon on the schedule, and I'm fine. I want to know where we are, because we really the last time we played a team like that was last year. Played Ohio State, took them down to the wire. They ended up winning the national championship, but didn't play I don't believe a top 5 team this year. Did we get into the top 10 at all? But yeah, this year it seemed like after the first half of the Southern Cal game, it looked like we were on our way to 7-2 in that game, and probably not falling apart, going 1-2 in the last 2 games and getting destroyed. Then maybe that happens anyway, but I feel like we've got a little more offense going. But anyway, yeah, it's not that bad. It's 3 years, and instead of going, okay, this is an improvement, I'd like to be better. Okay, this is where I am, I guess. I wish it was a little better this year. It's going to be a tough test next year with the size of the recruiting class. Somehow people thought that, my God, they're getting 10 people. They're not taking all the Nebraska kids. What on earth are you doing? This is the worst recruiting class. They were such a young team this year. They were, of the 100, I think they ended up like 120, because they started cutting guys and they were told that you could grandfather. They were going to extend it from this year because they didn't finalize the house agreement, and so they didn't have to be at 105. And of the 120 we kept, I believe 96 were freshmen and sophomores. Very young team for this season. If you go look at that, find one of those charts on, say, On3 or something that breaks down the roster by age, and you can see we didn't need to bring another 25 true freshmen in. Brought in 10, brought in 3 offensive linemen. Admittedly, we had like 1 defensive lineman, and then he backed out like 10 days, 2 weeks before, wouldn't be before signing, but about 10 days, 2 weeks ago. And so, but we got the numbers we were looking for. It was supposed to be like 11, because then Dayton Raiola, he backed out as well. But still, that was all they were looking for, was around 10. And then by extension, you can assume they're going to go hit the portal hard to try and get older next year. They didn't want to go into next year, with they only lost 19 seniors out of that 125, and so they just want to get older next year. I think the fact that they were so confident on that pledge class leads me to believe that when that portal entry happens, you're going to see some quick, I'm in the portal, 2 days later I'm with Nebraska on a bunch of guys right away. That's what I anticipate. I don't know that. I'm not on Twitter proclaiming that I know, but it's just what makes sense with the youth of the roster. So right now my expectations are okay. We've gotten back to like 2 winning records in a row. We hadn't had a winning record since Riley in 15 against that powder puff schedule, where every decent team like just ran them out of the stadium, and you kind of knew what was coming in 2017. Was that 15? I think he was there 15, 16, 17. So 16 was the one where they raced out to 8-0 against one of the worst schedules in the country, and we're playing these teams that were like, in the Jeff Sagarin ratings were like 80th or 90th, and having to pull away from them in the fourth quarter. And I think it was 7-0. They shot out to 7-0. They got ranked number 7, and I was just like, this is the worst top 10 team I've ever seen. And yeah, then the decent teams on the few decent teams on the schedule showed up and slap. So as far as I don't think there's another team out there whose fan base hangs in there. Now we do have, I think, the most psychologically damaged fan base out there, because we got the ones now that have like gone to where they show up online when we lose and they're almost gleeful. I told you we suck. This is suck. And I hate Dylan Raiola, and I hate everybody. I hate our line, and I hate our coaches, and we have to fire everybody. And just every loss is fire everybody. And all I got to say is I get it. You've got the guys who swear they're never, they're kind of like the ones who are like, Kaepernick's kneeling. I'm not watching the NFL anymore. They're selling Bud Light. I'm not watching the NFL anymore. I thought you stopped Kaepernick. God, you just let me be. And we've kind of got that going. I'm never watching another Husker game. I've hit my limit. And then the same person next season in the third game when we lose to Michigan is telling you, I've hit my limit again. And it is. I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's actually been a marked rise in paid therapy for Husker fans, and I understand. After the Northwestern game in Dublin, I just came home, played with the damn dog for 2 hours, and if anything, it's taught me not to blow up as much anymore. And it's like that's kind of why my column's called the 24-hour rule. It usually ends up being because I don't have a great idea in 24 hours, and I want to do it on like a Tuesday, and it ends up being like a Wednesday or a Thursday. But yeah, it's like if I wrote some of the stuff, I have to watch myself because I do the post game recaps, and and the Iowa post game, not this season but last season, I reread that the next day and be like, I might have been mad because I think I just I think I just out of spite, I rehashed the Iowa's like $4 million settlement with their racial discrimination suit, like one of their 3 discrimination suits under BARDA, and that was just no reason other than me being pissed we lost on a field goal 13-10 again because I couldn't take it. But anyway, what else do we got here? Boardman says Notre Dame is throwing on the latex suit and winning one for the Gemper. I can almost see a gold helmet popping out of that box in Pulp Fiction, and bring me the Gimp. Yeah, what does he say? 19 of the 120 are exempt from the 105. Yeah, they're grandfathered until they're done. So I think this season we have to go to 105, but we'll be over it because of the number of guys who were grandfathered in as being on the roster, and then they kind of pulled the plug. Let's see. Yep. I quit the says I quit the NFL in 14, never looked back. I'm happy, got my Sundays back. I quit the NFL probably, I don't know, like the late 80s, early 90s, just because I was so much more into college football. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever quit a sport for a political stance. They'd have to get kind of out of control, but no, I just quit the NFL because I just didn't find it as exciting. Yes, they're bigger, faster, better. I give every bit of that argument to NFL fans, but yeah, just too many dump passes. There was a stretch where it was just, I said they ought to retitle Madden like 98, dump pass 98, because it was just safety valves and running back dumps all the time, except for like a few of the elite ones. But anyway. I think Utah will be surprised in the Vegas Bowl, says Joel Tilson. Let's talk about that for a minute, actually. I would not. Where's my drink? Hold on. There we go. Getting the dry throat, and I don't have anybody in to grab the baton and run while I'm getting my throat wet. Yeah. I did an article this week. FanDuel came out with the minus 13.5 spread for Utah, and I'll tell you what I said. It's like I ended it all by saying I am horrible at sports gambling. So after all this advice, take it at your own risk. I said, here's the thing, like it, it's being an evil bet, if you bet against the Huskers type of thing. But I said, take the 13 and a half because we were told last week that TJ Lateef will not practice this week, dinged his hammy against Iowa. And I just said the history of dinged hammies, and not 100%, but the history of dinged hammies is you're always longer coming back from them than you think. Look at Quentin. I just said, look, you could go look at me when it happened to me about, oh God, like 20 years ago. And I pulled one and then pulled the other and then tore one because I kept trying just to run through it. And a pull can go to a tear. And then I tore it and then it got atrophied. And then, hey, now it's time for electroshock and where they just put some electricity through the muscle and rehab and the bike and bringing it back slowly and all that. And my ankles were black and blue. And they said, yeah, that's the blood going down your leg and pooling up, after the tear and all that. But it turns out we got good. And I said, to me, I said, this might be a great time to go grab Utah as a 13 and a half point favorite, because if that hamstring lingers, and like Jalen Gramstad has to play that game, you're going to see that 13 and a half go to like probably 20 or something like that. And you'll be sitting pretty with 13 and a half and against, our third string former NIAI quarterback is in there. So, but we got good news today on TJ. He practiced yesterday, and he not full speed, but they've got him out there moving around, and they expect him to be going harder Wednesday. Rule says he's very much ahead of schedule as far as he's concerned. They're just taking it a little slow because let's face it, like obviously is Dylan going to transfer is going to come up. And so there's the thing. It's like, okay, you don't know who's doing what until the portal entry closes, was it January 6th or something like that? Do you really want to go, like your current starting quarterback, and maybe next year, if things don't fall your way, do you want to go dicking around with his hamstring? I myself was kind of, I talked about it here. I was a little flabbergasted. He was in that Iowa game down 40-16. It's like, it's not going to happen. He can't move. You've seen it anyway. How much worse can it be? So apparently he's moving well. That he's in practice, and it just sounds like they're speeding him up each day, and he's looking better than they hope. So good thing. Now, here's the thing: is Utah's favored. They average 40 points a game. They're about a 60-40 run pass team. They rush it a lot. They've got a very mobile quarterback. He's their second leading rusher, averages 6.6 per carry. The running backs, including him as a group, average 6.1 per carry. And so this team just sounds like it's made to crush us after those last two games. Now, Phil Snow comes in. You've got Phil Snow and Nut Butler, and I got the feeling that part of the problem was they thought maybe they God, I don't want to say quit. That's too strong. I don't like to suggest our guys quit on a guy or anything like that. But Rule did reiterate they were very disappointed in the effort the last two games. He was adamant that is not who we were the first 10 games. I don't know what happened. Something had to be done, et cetera, et cetera. It just couldn't be allowed to go on. So, but my thing is, it's like, this is Big 12 versus Big 10. We're not a great Big 10 defense, but look at us. We still finished 23rd nationally in yards allowed. And we were, number one against the pass, but we were like 90th, 90 something against the run out of 136 teams. So obviously a weakness. But we might not be giving the Big 10 conference enough credit here is the only thing. And they said this was Utah's also. This is the first time Utah has been a double-digit favorite in a bowl game since they were like 15.5-point favorites over Pittsburgh in the 2005 Fiesta Bowl. Okay, they might be, you might have a team, and I'm sorry, it's not as physical a conference. So I don't want to call it a weaker conference, but I think the diplomatic way of doing that is saying it's not as physical of a conference. But the thing is but then it comes down to, okay, looks like now I feel a lot better that TJ Lateef might be full speed. So that adds a dimension. Now, the only downside of it was his legs didn't really help him against Penn State. If Utah has that kind of Penn State speed and coverage and containment, it might not make a difference there, but I at least want the option of a full speed Lateef. Now they don't have Emmett Johnson. Emmett Johnson he never stated it specifically, but he is out of the bowl game. Now you got Mosey with the shot. Is going to get his shot. You're going to see a lot of Mosey. Probably look for the 1-2 punch in this one. Mosey, Mekhi Nelson, and Isaiah Mosey and Mekhi Nelson. And then now you know who's right after them in the pecking order is second team all Big Ten return guy, Kenneth Williams. It is Matt Rule saying, well, maybe when we get him in there and he's the track guy, we can run a couple plays where maybe he makes that corner on Utah. And he's like, wouldn't be surprised to see Dana try it. So I don't know, because it does look pretty hopeless. And my guess my final word on that for now, man, how many bowl games do you really have where it's not just of power teams from the last 10 years, say a Alabama, unless it's like an Alabama, gets outmatched, like say Michigan State, the one year where for some weird reason, Michigan State were like 4th and 5th, played in the Big Ten title game. And anybody who watched that game had to go, the Big Ten sucks. It was like 17-16. And it just looked like running backs running 4.9 40s both ways. Michigan State got destroyed by Bama. Iowa just got blown out of the stadium by Christian McCaffrey and Stanford. And so anyway, but you don't see a lot of that in bowl games. What you see a lot of here's a team that doesn't have a chance. And then they're just opening up the playbook because who gives a shit? And I love the idea of Dana Holgerson and who gives a shit. And he's been forced to run the ball down everybody's throat. And right now, I mean, literally the bowl game is where you can go, I don't give a fuck. And start running your goofy plays and going forward on 4th down more and all that. So if Utah kind of puts the hurt to us, wouldn't shock me, but you got a lot of fresh faces in there coaching him. Mike Eckler is helping with the defense. I wrote down notes from the press conference so I could stick those in when, Phil, he said he's added, I think he had him working with the edges. Some is what Rule said, but yeah, Rule said he's not exactly sure, but that Snow did want him to, because he's coached linebackers for years and years. Yeah, I think he was coaching linebackers at Tennessee, but yeah, so you got all of a sudden you got Eckler working with somebody. You're going to have nutty Eckler behavior. I don't know that Phil Snow's going to the 4-3. Todd was on here with us last week. Said he thought he was a 3-3-5 guy or a 3-man front guy himself, but Phil Snow was everything. He's been around so long. I think they said he ran when he was defensive coordinator at Temple and at Carolina. He ran 4-3, but when he was at Baylor, ran a 3-4 or a 3-3-5 or whatever at Baylor. So who knows what we'll see? But you can just let it all fly in the bowl game, where the fans will be the only ones, with their hearts in their throats. I think the way Rule is saying is he was saying this game means a lot to us, and there's something to be said for after those last 2 games, and you get a chance to, how to put this, like try to erase those memories a little going into your second semester in January in Lincoln, where it's going to be a little cold, and you've got like 3 or something months to kill before all of a sudden it's spring ball again. I'm like, holy shit, it's December 9th, man. I'm going to be covering softball here in just under 2 months, because their first tournament always starts in February. But yeah, Joel Tilson, it wouldn't shock me and I can't explain how or why it'll happen, but just the fact that it always does seem to happen in bowl games. Now, unfortunately, we're not getting one of those teams like, let's say if Notre Dame would have been the perfect example. Those teams that think they ought to be in bigger bowls or championship games or tournaments and all that, and then they get picked for a regular bowl game, and their heart's not in it. Kansas State, Bill Snyder and Kansas State had this stretch where they just had that mastered. Where Bill Snyder would go play his first 4 games against 1AA teams just to start 4-0, and it was a great thing when he was just trying to get that 0-11, 1-10 thing off their back and just get them 4 wins to start the year and have some confidence. And it worked. It worked eventually. But then they got really good and they were still playing shitty teams to start. And let's see, I think the 2 games I remember were he thought he should have been in the New Year's Day Bowl, and instead he was in some grapefruit bowl with Boston College, and everybody, they were favored by 17 and Boston College won. And then they didn't get into the BCS or something, or a New Year's Day Bowl again. They put them in the Alamo Bowl with Purdue and Drew Brees, and and that was their Michael Bishop year, where they think that was the year they reached number 2 at one point. They lost to Texas A&M in the Big 12 title game, and then dropped to the Alamo Bowl, didn't get a New Year's Day Bowl. Snyder was furious, and they go and get beat by like number 25 Purdue and Drew Brees. And it's like, even then, everybody knew Drew Brees was amazing. Might have should have taken that game a little more seriously, and nope, they lost. So yeah, it wouldn't totally shock me, and it's one of the reasons I'm going anyway. But this is one of those games where I'm gonna roll out to Vegas, and because I want to be there just in case it happens. And if it doesn't, what the hell? I was in Vegas for a couple of days. I'll have a marathon drive, get back sometime New Year's Day, and be ready to enjoy the 3 of the, because I think it's three of the playoff games on New Year's Day this year. So that's fantastic. Let's see what we got. And we also play the Huskies too in 2026. But here's the thing: they're trading, like what they do now is after a 2-year series, they're trading USC and UCLA for Washington and Oregon. You know what? I wouldn't be so confident about the Huskies. It's out there, but we've proven we can win in that stadium. Beautiful stadium too. Damn. I went out to softball. I always take like one softball regular season road trip at least, and so I went out to Washington just so I could dick around the Pacific Northwest for about a 10-day stretch. Just gorgeous up there. Have a beautiful drive out, and their softball stadium is right behind the football stadium end zone on the bay side there, and that was at Washington Lake, I think. And their scoreboard actually hangs almost over the softball stadium's right field bleachers, so they've got those two right there together. It's just a gorgeous view. And heck, I might go back there again, man. I don't know. That might be something to do. I definitely want to go to the Oregon game in 20. I think is that 26. Maybe that's Oregon next year. And we have Washington at home. And if we have Washington at home, don't write them off, because they didn't come east looking too good on the road this year. Wisconsin beat them. Wisconsin did finish strong, but no one was expecting that. For Fred, on the other hand, thinks they'll be surprised by how bad we are in the Vegas Bowl, and in a completely different line of thought. Remember what I was saying about people needing some therapy? Fred, I think there's a couch and a bottle of gin beside it waiting for you. Joel Tilson ain't having it. Don't think so, Fred. Suck. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, Nebraska strong. Yeah, sadly, I think we regress and go 6-6 in the regular season in 2026. Yeah, with losses: Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, Illinois, Iowa, and Washington. I wouldn't be so quick with Illinois and Washington. And God, we got to get Iowa one of these years. Son of bitch, bastard, fuckers, dicks. Sorry, got off track a little. Let's see. What do we got from Fred here? It says, I can't see us having any success unless our new staff guy is helping throw some new wrinkles in. We got no EJ or Rocco. Well, hey, coming into this year, Emmett Johnson was a guy who'd run for 400 yards. We might have an EJ. You got a freshman, Mosey, who came in and basically grabbed the backup job because he was a 6 foot, 205-pound receiver, and we thought we could get him on the field a little more as a running back. And I think the plan was to get him on a little more. I don't think they planned for an 1,800-yard season out of Emmett. If there's a regret, I wish Emmett nothing but the best. If turning pro is what you want to do, and your advisors, think they know where you're going, and it's more of a benefit to go than stay, then by all means do it, man. This is your knees, your legs, and your life. But I would have loved to see him get 2,000 total yards, and I think that was in play. So let's see. Utah head coach is retiring. We won't win. Yeah, we're not favored to. Certainly not. Nebraska is now at 15.5. Oh, let me see. Just because they do they do sponsor an article here and there, and if there's nothing I enjoy more than getting money to write, and I enjoy writing, but I enjoy writing and getting paid even more. So let's see, because the FanDuel came in the first line came in at 14, and then the FanDuel line came in at 13.5. So let's see what we got. Yeah, FanDuel did bump it up another point to 15.5. And I'm just wondering if that's when they started getting wind that he was supposed to miss the Monday practice, and we're starting to nose that line up. Oh gosh, what else we got? Cincinnati is a 3.5-point underdog to Navy. I would love to get me some Cincinnati in that one. Yeah, anyway, he didn't pay me to read a bunch of FanDuel scores. Kind of like the Huskers to cover that. It's follow Latif closely. If he's fully mobile, man, it's like I still don't know that he can automatically pop it and be ready to go. Let me take a look real quick here. This is where I want to actually bring up. I want to look again at what Utah had a very strange total defense versus total points number. So in total defense, I believe that's they're 61st or something like that. Let me change pages here. Yeah, the Utes are 61st in total defense, giving up 360 yards a game. That's quite a few more than we gave up. Our total defense, if I page back quickly here, is we were 22nd in total defense, giving up 312 yards a game. I believe we were 90th in rush defense. Well, we were number 1 in pass or number 2 in pass defense, but number 90 in rush defense. But now if I go over to the scoring defense, this is what is kind of odd. Whoop, not scoring offense, you bastard. Scoring defense. How dare you? Scoring defense, Utah is tied for 16th, giving up 19 points a game. I don't know if they were masters of field position or something like that. If they've got a punter who can bury them, and because that Rhule's first year, it felt like we were just starting on the damn 10 or 11, because we never ran a punt back ever, and we always let them at least drive out to the 40 or the 50, and then just fair catch on the 11, and we're done. Because they wouldn't let. I remember it was Trey Palmer and then somebody else. They wouldn't let ever go back and be the returner on the 11. That was always Oliver Martin or somebody like that's job, just to do the Santino Panico and just fair catch everything. But so there you go. It's so yards can be had on Utah. Let's see. Go ahead back to my full screen here. All right, I'm still with you. Says we need to hit the portal for running backs. I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking for an experienced back in the portal. But then last year's they didn't really hit the portal because they knew they had something in Emmett, and thank God they didn't. Right? How much would it have sucked to have Emmett Johnson backing up another Dowdell well, with an 1,800-yard season in his holster, just sitting there. Well, that was one of these stories that didn't get printed, that I got on pretty good authority, that when Holgerson, for about 2 days he came in and he was an advisor or whatever, and the first time he watched Dowdell and Emmett running through drills and scrimmaging, they said he basically took a look at Emmett for about 3 minutes and turned around and goes, like, why in the bleep is this guy not starting? He just didn't understand it. And yeah, sometimes you got those guys. It's easier now with the portal, because and with NIL, I know some people are just still outraged that, like I said, that the guys who are the reason you're watching get paid anything else as a scholarship, no loyalty, blah, blah, blah. You're jealous, give it up. You weren't that good, or if you were that good, you'd want that money too. But it's created parity, because guess what? These 4 or 5-star guys, where you used to be able to just keep them, 3 and 4 deep. Like they said, John McKay at Southern Cal in the early 70s, before they at least started chopping the roster sizes from like unlimited to 120 and then to 85, they said he would have like 5 I-backs on the roster at all time that were NFL worthy. And he just kept them so they couldn't be out there beating them with somebody else. Well, now if you got guys at that talent level, you got to pay them. And so what the portal and NIL does is they force them. It's like they force these teams to just not be able to afford to keep a roster like that anymore. And these guys now have the freedom to leave, and we're seeing a lot more of these guys now rise to the top, where they might just stay there buried, hoping it happens for them in their senior year, knowing they're getting suspended for a year if they transfer. Which I know that. Oh no, you have to sit out and lose a year of eligibility. I just refer to that as a suspension now, because give me a better definition of a suspension of other than you sit out a year and lose that year of eligibility. But anyway, yeah, it is spreading things out. I do think we'll be looking in the portal, but I think they'll be taking, a hard look too at, say, Mosey or Nelson. I think Mosey might have a little bit of the advantage there, but I also think Nelson's damn good, but he just looks like slower with that number 35. He needs a new number. It makes no sense. But when I see 35, I'm half expecting like the slow wide eye back or the fullback there. And it's like, no, I think those guys are pretty close. I think Mosey had the edge on him. Besides Emmett Johnson, who is opting out, Rocco Spindler's opting out. Understandable. He's been playing on that, surgically fixed finger where in the, what do they call it? The glove or the bar or something, but he's been wearing that brace, on the finger and the hand ever since Minnesota. And he wants to not, I think, have that thing like not in pain when he's going to the combine and whatnot, if he gets invited to the combine. But he is out. And then I think he's the only one who's opted out so far, him and Emmett. And then we've only lost two who said they're transferring, both freshmen last year. Caden Vandermass, a defensive back. I think, was he a Millard North guy? Was he local? And then was it Jamarian Parker, the running back, who was highly touted, and I thought was recovering most of the year from injury. And maybe that's a good sign that he doesn't see playing time opening for him, because he was one they said, freshman year, recovers from injury, gets a few pounds on him, thought had the ability to challenge, but maybe he doesn't have the ability to challenge. Or once again, maybe he's got the interest from other teams. And like I said, there's not really bidding wars anymore. You have a guy, God, I always forget his name, but he's basically our value guy, our actuary, our numbers guy, and everybody has one of those guys now, and they're not in bidding wars. They're putting their value on these guys, and they might bump it a little, but pretty much they stay within the boundaries. And if somebody, let's say you're offering them $400,000, and this kid, I want $550,000, and according to, I talk about it a lot, the 2 surveys The Athletic did, these guys will basically, the assistant coaches have the value to work with. And these coaches say, well, when they say, I want this much, we wish them well. We're not going, our guy has them valued here. We're not going over that just to win a bidding war, because they are now having to put together a roster with the revenue sharing and the new rules on the NIL. They are having to budget this whole thing, and they can't just be going over in bidding wars, because every school has a number, like I think it's like 21, 22 million that they have to, that's the money they get to pay their share. That's the university's share of the profits, or the athletic department's share of the profits. That's the max that every team can spend on the players. So let's see. But yeah, so those are all the guys that was Joel. Those are just all the guys that are out. Yeah, it's just Rocco and Emmett, and then the two I told you that are entering the portal, so they're out, and then they weren't playing anyway. Let's see. Oh, and I don't know what they were talking about. They said, yeah, Bobby Newcomb, and what was that short, tubby JUCO running back, D'Angelo? I don't think D'Angelo was tubby. D'Angelo was a little ball of muscle, and he had one of the saddest stories because you had the allegedly Eric Crouch went back home when he didn't get the starting job over Newcomb, and then when you saw them both playing, you kind of understood why, that he was clearly the better quarterback at the time, because Newcomb was still recovering from an injury. Because by the end of the year, he's back. He wasn't full speed beginning of the year, but he was at the end of the year, and he was the top punt returner in the country. So it kind of worked out. But then guys started thinking, run home when I get mad's the way to do it. And one of the stories was, oh God, it wasn't Evans, but then it was not Diedrich, not from Canada, the one from Mississippi, 36 Buck. Might have been Buckhalter, and he went home to Mississippi. Same thing. I'm not starting. Screw you guys. Well, his dad told him that he was officially thrown out of the house unless he got his ass back to Lincoln. But if I remember the article, because it's years ago, it's like 98 or something like that. And as a freshman, you'd had Amon Green, or when D'Angelo was a freshman, you had Amon Green dealing with turf toe all year. And so as a freshman, D'Angelo comes in, and then I think Darren Diedrich got hurt, and we're down to D'Angelo, and he runs for like 150 yards on Kansas State. And then D'Angelo gets the mystery groin abdominal injury that everybody was getting there in about a 5-yard period. I just wondered which machine was doing this to everybody in Boyd Epley's weight room, but they were all getting the mystery groin abdomen injury, and they couldn't play. I think Erwin Sweeney had it for a spell. There was a prep freshman tight end that was on the roster and had it. Well, D'Angelo gets it, and he plays through it in it was 96, and in the 96, this was 96. It was the championship game, the Big 12 championship against Texas. We're a huge favorite because they're like 7-4, 7-5 on the year, but won the South or whatever. And then the whole team comes down with the flu because they're playing with no warm weather shit underneath in the freezing rain against Colorado to prove how tough they are. And half the team catches the flu. This friend of mine, what it is, like a friend of a friend story. So take it for what it's worth. But one of his friends was drove the team bus and said they just looked like death warmed over getting off the bus. They're all just pale and just like heads hanging. And so anyway, we lose that game. D'Angelo doesn't have the flu, I think, but he has the mystery groin injury. He powers through, runs for like 140 yards on like 30 some odd carries, just banging for yards. And then the next season, he's not starting. And so he brings the whole family in to yell at Solich. And then I guess Solich just booted him out of the office. He ends up leaving the team. And then he goes to like Garden City Junior College. I think he just kind of had injuries. And I always felt really bad for him, because you'd like to think as a kid that college is the place to make bad decisions and not have it screw you over, like screw your life over. But the fact is, you can make a bad decision that screws your life over. And being being a sophomore and bringing the family in to berate your coach just turned out not to be the best move. And he said later, it sounds like he made a really good life for himself, and always says that's one of his biggest regrets. Like if I could go back, like really matured, if I could go back and do it over, I'd absolutely do it differently and just put my head down and go. So just kind of said, hey, did it as like a, hey kids, I completely own this mistake now. So remember what happened to me. Don't let it happen to you. So yeah, it's D'Angelo Evans, man. What could have been there? Joel's asked about the portal. I covered that so far. Yeah, nobody's really declaring yet. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, Utah's D ain't special. It's just that weird thing, because that's kind of like the opposite of Iowa on offense is that way. Like everybody's like, look how many points Iowa's scoring, and they did. They moved up to about 50th or something in points, like total points nationally, but their offense was still jack shit garbage. It was like still 108th out of 100 or like 120th out of 130 something teams. They were the offense was still awful. That I think that's what really got into Rule's craw was here was just a really bad offense moving the ball against us, and the guy who can't really pass was passing, and it was just 166 yards, but it was just still irritating. But no, let's see, no the D's not special, but they weirdly, I don't know if they've just got great red zone defense. Let me peek at that. Maybe red zone's kind of their thing. If I can find it on this screen here, because I found it somewhere else. I might have. Let me see. We might get lucky. Oh, here we go. Red zone defense. God, I hate those big U's in other people's logos. I want Utah's to be easy to find. Doesn't appear like they're in the red zone defense leaders or anything here. Where's that UU? And we had weird red zone defense numbers in that we were next to last in red zone defense conversions. I think it was like 6.8%, 30th 31 or some number like that. But the 31 red zone attempts allowed were like number 13 in the country, like fewest red zone tries. So yeah, we had a really hey Utah, where are you? But yeah, we had a really like seesaw defense as far as of numbers on one end. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Kennesaw State. Okay, Utah's 33rd nationally in red zone defense, so they're pretty good. And they were top 10 in red zone attempts. So it sounds like you get near the 20, they shut you down. They don't let. So they didn't let teams inside the 20, and when they did let teams, they were top 10 and not letting teams inside the 20, and then they were top 35 and letting them score when they did let them in. So that might explain how your defense is average in yards allowed, but they were very so it's like they don't get a lot of 3 and outs. They allow yards, but they don't they stiffen up once you start getting down, say, near the red zone. So yeah, something to be said there. Bring this back over. So it may not be special, but it's tough to get in on them. Holgerson had to tell Rule to give EJ more time. Got him. Well, what Rule was is Holgerson sold. We're going to use our top 3 and possibly top 4 running backs a lot. Emmett will start, and then I think you got to look at Emmett early, like the Cincinnati game. If you remember that one, people didn't believe me, and I was telling him he was 5 or 6 times, 7 times in that game, just an ankle slap or something from breaking long runs. He was so close to it each time. And what happened as the year went on, he started getting those big runs. And I think that the Rule was down with let's play these 4 guys. He didn't want to get Emmett banged up or overused. And by the end of the year, he's the one defending it too. He was all in. Like early in the year, I can see that being a chat between Holgerson and Rule. End of the year, he was all in because he was even talking yesterday unasked about how Emmett will do well in the NFL because of his quickness, because of his ability to miss tackles. Because he was saying over and over for the last several weeks, look at him. We can run him 25, 30 times a game because he's not taking big hits out there. Watch him. He's making guys miss. And then, you have those crowd cheering times where he drags the pile for about 3 or 4 yards. That's not like getting decked from, the hit you don't see and getting knocked silly a few times a game. He was like kind of the opposite of Amir Abdullah in that case. Amir Abdullah led the league in led the country in fumbles lost his junior and senior year while he was being an All-American. It was his weakness, and they said somebody who'd watched his film, I can't remember who, said, you watch, he takes some hard hits from the side that when he's running in those tight areas, past the line and into the middle there, he doesn't see that stuff coming and he gets drilled unexpectedly and the ball flies. And Emmett just doesn't get drilled. He sees that. He's not doing a lot of complete spin moves, but just his ability to come right at you and then dart 90 degrees left without changing speed and take off again. Yeah, that the rule was spot on with that on how he avoided hits. So that's why Holgerson said he's getting stronger as the game goes on. I bored everybody once with he's not getting stronger. Everybody else is just slowing down, and his training has him to where he doesn't. So, and I heard this today. People are asking me, this isn't happening. Harburg better be ready if TJ. Harburg has not taken any snaps this season. He is a tight end. The only snaps he takes are those Wildcat snaps where they all know it's coming because Harburg's in, and we never did anything but run him. And so they just send everybody at him, and it's, those never did much. But no, Harburg has not worked with the quarterbacks at all. So don't look for that. Now, look for Harburg to come in for some Harburg only plays, sure, but no, there's not a universe. And by saying this, I'm sure now they're working him and he's going to start. But I don't think there's the universe where Heinrich Harburg comes in and plays, unless this is all one big cat and mouse game they're playing. And yes, we have been in the emails we're getting about practices and press conferences. There are none where the press is going to get to watch practice at all. So got that. Nebraska strong. Go Big Red says, Andy, how much eligibility do you have left to play football? Not a lot. No, actually quite a bit. I've still got my 5 to play 4, I guess. If I ever went out there to do anything but embarrass myself place kicking or punting, it would be, I'm obviously not a lineman. I was like a quarterback, defensive back, wide receiver type, played a proud 8-man football player. And I was a regular visitor to the emergency room. I could tell some good stories there, but let's not. Played every game. I missed one half with a cracked sternum, and so that's the only time I missed due to injury. I'm 61 now. I love those stories because they've got Michael Chiklis playing the guy that made like a Division III team as a linebacker when he was 50. And I can tell you the only thing that would happen if I walked out there now is there'd be one whistle. There'd be a bunch of them as soon as the play were over. And if it was on TV, the announcers would be doing those hush tones. Like, and one of them, oh man, Jim, I don't think he's getting up. But you asked for eligibility. I got it all. If you scream Jamarian, does it stop rhinos from running? I don't know. I'm not going to scream Jamarian. I might find a reason to scream, but let's see. What do we got? Oh, we got some Iowa abuse. That's always good. Iowa is like the fool on the hill, seeing the sun going down and the world spinning around. It isn't really a high bar to jump over. Let's beat Ohio State instead. God, but let's start with that. Andy is telling me, oh, okay, now we're in trouble. I could be our Rudy walk-on. Well, if I could go make money trying to sell having sold my own made-up story, because Rudy, what a great movie. It's all bullshit. I think beyond he was on Notre Dame. He did make he made half a tackle in the movie. They couldn't have anybody stealing Rudy's screen time. So yeah, his half a tackle turned into a tackle. Go on YouTube, watch Joe Montana's that Joe Montana was a freshman on that team, and he just found the whole thing hilarious because he's like, none of this shit ever happened. The crowd was never chanting Rudy. The 3 guys that carried him off the field were like the 3 biggest pranksters on the team, and they knew Rudy was like so full of himself that he'd think it was real. And so there he is waving while these guys are laughing their asses off. And he said when they found out that he is the only guy ever carried off the field of a Notre Dame game, they were like, damn it, if we'd have known that, there's no way in hell we would have picked the kid up. So they were really kicking themselves that they made him the only guy ever carried off the field in a Notre Dame game. And hell, why would and while we're talking about more reason to poke fun at Notre Dame, Dan Jenkins, legendary college football writer, great guy, really funny. Like a lot of guys who wrote into their 90s, he was getting a little crusty and cranky at the end. Howard Cosell too, but he just wrote joyous things. And he told the story because, win one for the Gipper, Newt Rockne and George Gipp, and they'll lionize George Gipp and Notre Dame memories. Well, it turned out more of the true George Gipp story was Newt Rockne needed an athlete, and George Gipp had been out of high school for a few years, I think, or maybe he'd played college. It wasn't for him because he couldn't make enough money at it. And he was like a pool hall. He was like a great athlete, but also a noted, like, I think, pool hall hustler and maybe card shark. And so they approached him, found him in his shooting pool and talked him into playing for Notre Dame. And he was very adamant that no way in hell was he going to go to a single class. And they were like, and that could be arranged. And, and if anybody ever would have gotten the full suspension for gambling on his own team and gambling on his team games, George Gipp would have been that guy. And supposedly, I think after Jenkins researched all this, one of the lines he had was the only thing he wouldn't have given a shit and been on the deathbed telling, hey, dude, coach, go tell the boys to win one for the Gipper. Said all the Gipper would have been doing was wanting to know if the wire services had picked up on the fact that he was sick yet, and if not, he could Newt go down and drop a couple hundred on whoever their opponent was that weekend for him, since the line was probably pretty awful with not knowing he wasn't going to be in the game. So yeah, there you go. That say it. Use any other thing. I could be Rudy for one thing. I'm not 5'3". Oh God, and I just can't imagine. I wouldn't want a movie made about me. No one would want to see it. I wouldn't want to make it. I already said that Harburg hadn't been playing quarterback. Yeah, it'd be Grandpa or Dobble at QB if TJ can't go. But no, it sounds like he's going. He's ahead of it. Gary Pierce is adamant. It's like, no, he should get to play it. No, he's not this year he is a tight end. That's what they see as his best shot at the NFL. And I'd agree. It's because he's one, he actually graded out pretty well. I mean, you can kind of tell where he is, that he was behind that when Lindenmeyer was getting 75-80% of the snaps. They weren't running any split tight ends. So he was only seeing like 10 to 20 snaps a game. But you unleash Harburg, and especially after, I'm sure they'll get, a track guy to work with them, but unleash Harburg into the combine and prepare to not be shocked if he gets drafted, shocked at all if he gets drafted. Saying Iowa will be blasted by Vanderbilt in the ReliaQuest Bowl. They just seem to kind of hang around close with everybody, though. I'm not sure I buy that. I hate them. I would love for them. I would love for Diego Pavia on full blast to throw like a 30-point beating on him, and just have Pavia doing Pavia things, driving Iowa fans absolutely bonkers. Like, there's a bunch of them that were enraged, even though they won 40-16. They were, weirdly say, but Emmett got his 217, and they were screaming about all the holding Nebraska got away with. It was wonderful. It's like, because you just had to tongue in cheek anybody yelling at Nebraska about Nebraska getting away with holding when, what was it, two and a half years in the Big Ten before they ever called a holding on a Nebraska conference opponent. That was wonderful. Bobby Newcomb, before he got hurt, his ability to run the option literally went sideways. He might have been able to come back and do it by the end of the year because his lateral movement certainly was there for, when the punt returns started kicking in and he started becoming part of that passing game. But by that time, Crouch had firmly established himself. Let's see. Yeah, here it was. The athletic Kublagia thing. And if that's not it, that's close enough. That everybody was getting that. Then I think they melted down some machine that Epley had built that was probably just wrecking that. See, when I was in high school, that machine that was just causing more injury than providing any benefit was the leaper machine. And you basically had these, you'd get down in a squat and you had this thing with like two padded like hooks over your shoulders. You'd squat and then try to explode up as hard as you could into this thing with resistance. And it would show like the power. It had a little, power, how many pounds per whatever you exploding with. I didn't notice it ever improving my vertical leap, but it did give me some lower back problems and other people too. It was the best machine for freaking spine compression ever, I think. Let's see. Yeah, Gary Newcomb should have stayed at QB and transferred. Today, sure. Back then, he didn't want to eat a year suspension, and he was you know, and he was he an All-American as a returner? If he wasn't, I think he would have been close. But yeah, that was his shot. He had a decent arm, and the funny thing was, Crouch had a really good arm until his shoulders just got destroyed. Because remember when the year, I think it's his junior year, and they outgained Texas like 500 to 270, but commit 4 or 5 turnovers, a couple of them inside the 10. They lose like 27-24, but then they come back, and he only threw like 7 or 8 passes, and they won 21-7 just by mauling Texas and not even trying to throw it. And then he had like the first of his shoulder surgeries, I think, after that season. And then they went and just for whatever reason, they put Nebraska in the Alamo Bowl against poor Northwestern and won what was that, like 63-14, or was that? Yeah, because that was probably 2000. I think that was 2000. God, poor Northwestern, they were pissed too. They're like, this is what we get for the Alamo Bowl. Let's see. Some weird. Are you Yeti? Just want you to know that. So, thank you. Go big red, Yeti. And then yeah, I remember that Evans and Newcomb game versus Washington. I thought, I thought we'd go undefeated after that game, because that's when Newcomb got hurt. Then Crouch came in, and Crouch did well, but then Crouch got hurt. And then it was the most overrated. It was the Monte Cristo, and there was like Cristo, like they beat Missouri at the very end, and they hold them off. I think they were like inside the 20, maybe inside the 10 with 4 downs, and we stopped them as time ran out. And then Cristo starts against Texas, even though Crouch is ready to go. And by the end of the first half, I think they put Crouch in the second half. But in the second half against Missouri, coupled with the first half of Texas, I think he put the ball or like had like 6 turnovers in those 4 quarters or something like that. It was a goddamn disaster. And then Crouch came in, led a little bit of a comeback, but I think Texas was up too much by then. And that was when they had Ricky Williams was just carrying guys around at times, and they carried Mac Brown off the field because that broke like their 46 consecutive home wins or whatever. The Washington game, I believe, that was 96, because that was Frost, and I believe that was the first Frost year. And that, because then not 98, not 96, 98, because it was Frost. So Frost was 96. I take it back. I was thinking Solich, but no, that was Frost was in, and I think they won like 28-14, but it felt like way worse. And I think Frost ran for a couple like fairly long touchdowns in that one. And we've got the Fred 4-star special. The dancers at Spearmint Rhino said Frost D wasn't special either. Gary's staying down on this Heinrich at quarterback. He didn't hit. He played just wildcat. I don't think he threw a single pass. It was all snap it to Heinrich, let him run, or putting him in for those like 4-inch tush push gains. That tush push just never worked. Or was it 97? Then we crushed Washington in 97 with Frost, but I thought 98, Frank's first year, we crushed Washington, and we did. That is correct. Okay, thank you, Fred. Yeah, because we did crush them in Lincoln. I was there, and that was like one of those like 94-degree days, so it was really hot, and it was another of the Hewards that got whooped on. So that is correct. Washington's in that. Seattle was 97, Lincoln was 98. Let's see. Maybe this RU Yeti's just going with weirdness. I think we're gonna roll by that. Let's see. if Utah has a good red zone defense, we play into their hands because we suck in the red zone. I would hope another thing that happens in the bowl game is we get away from this. Let's just cram it into the gut in the red zone, and if that doesn't work, do it again and turn it over on downs. Yes, 97 in Washington was the Frost coming out party, and Heward whined we beat him up till we beat the shit out of him. In Seattle in 98, then, yeah, that was with D'Angelo and Bobby. Let's see. Yeah, Emmett Johnson's shiftiness and ability not to take a clean shot helped with his fumbles and longevity. And then, yeah, he was awesome. That's just what a great year. Satterfield, man, I don't want to like beat the dead tight end horse, but what were you thinking? I mean, the first time he came in against Illinois in it was that Rules first year, came in against Illinois. You know, it's like we drove down, then they drove down. We stopped them on our half-yard line, and Emmett comes in like the fourth quarter of that with running backs getting dinged up, and that was my first thought too. Is he looks better than any of our running backs I've seen tonight, and that's when he was a true freshman. So yeah, we might have left something on the table there. I don't care. So many of my predictions end up blowing up in my face. One of them was Notre Dame's getting into the CFP. I have no doubt. So, you know, I just feel like at times that part, and when Paul Newman always had his facts and figures, Butch Cassidy in the movie, and that he was talking about how beautiful Bolivia was, and the train drops him in at a broken off former train station, got like horse shits everywhere, llama shit or something, and there's just nothing around, and he had told everybody how beautiful it was going to be. And in Sundance, Robert Redford just looks at me and goes, "Do you ever get tired of being right all the time?" And that's me. I never get tired of being right all the time. Notre Dame, you're in. But I did say before the season that that Emmett Johnson would be our first 1,000-yard rusher, and this is him coming off, running for 400 or 500 yards last year. But I said he'd be our first 1,000-yard rusher, just from what I'd seen him in spring and fall practice, where he just looked built different. And I said, and just in his pass catching ability, he's going to probably get 1,500 total yards or more. And I think he ran for 1,400, 1,821 total. A disappointment, man. If he had played his senior year, he would have been almost a lock to pass Jeff Kinney for most receptions by a Nebraska running back in school history. He did lead the nation's Division I anyway, the nation's running backs in receiving catches and yards with like 350. So yeah, we're gonna miss that. But if Isaiah Mosey steps into that is a converted receiver. I would find that really odd if they didn't throw the ball to him just as much, if not more, if he becomes our starter. Gary Pierce says, no idea who our running back is. Rule says Ives is, just by default, Ives is third now. He came into fall camp kind of the firm number 2, and then pulled the hammy right away and out 4 or 5 weeks. And by that point, you're back down to number 4. I felt bad for him, and I was happy that he played him like the majority after Emmett came out. He actually played him for like 13 carries for like 80 something yards against Houston Christian. So, and he led us in carries and yards that day. So I'm glad he did that, because that had to suck to just think, here I am, I've got number 2, probably, hey, I'm challenging Emmett. Yeah, well, you should. You're not going to, but you should think you are. And I'm not being funny in any way when I say that. But hopefully it works out. We get a good game, and if Ives can get a few carries, so much the better. He's just been banging away at it. I mean, he went from this kid needs to gain about 30 pounds to gaining it, keeping the speed, and was looking pretty good. And boom, I'm hurt again. Got a touchdown in the Pinstripe Bowl. So that best wishes, hopes for that kid. It just seems like he keeps getting after it, and just keeps having to face the adversity. So let's wish him all the luck. Yeah. Joel, they say Harburg can throw out of the Wildcat. Well, he can, but I don't know. I think of the 3 other guys on the roster, if you added him to that room, he's still the 4th. He still has the 4th best passing ability. He's got a very strong arm, but I think those three can all throw it with better touch and accuracy. Let's see. Oh God, yeah. 1990 Gary Pierce, 1999 Buck Hall, Stonehands Alexander, the killer combo. And remember, like Darren Diedrich was in that too. And Diedrich would fumble. Diedrich in the Colorado game, we catch up to 38-30 and we're driving and down to the one and he fumbles on the one. And what might have been a hell of a fourth quarter, it takes the air out of our balloon. Colorado's waving those fours on the sideline for the fourth quarter, and 62-36 becomes our fun. They just run away from the fourth quarter was almost as bad as the first quarter. That was one of the best Eric Crouch games. That was one bit. It's like Brent Musburger, just with Nebraska fans, is constantly being a fucking tool. And I remember in that game, he is just, you can hear how happy he is. It's not that he's saying it, he is yelling it, and there is just unchecked glee in his voice. And he's going, and Boulder, Colorado is where Eric Crouch's Heisman chances come to die. And he's just so happy about that. And it's like, I don't see how a guy that just racked up 400 because I think he like threw for like 190, ran for 200 or something around there, and just did everything he could to get him back at 35-7. And like I said, we catch up to like 38-30, and he is just doing it all. And they're going, oh, but his Heisman chances died. I'm like, I don't know. It seems like that was a pretty good Heisman stamp as far as individual abilities there. But anyway, let's see. Gary Pierce, look at the record. They've given up a bunch of points. They, according to the thing, they only averaged giving up like 20 a game, but giving up like more yards. So maybe they had some low ones too. I'd have to check the schedule. Okay, I don't know where this is coming from. I am nobody's Rudy, and I refuse. Yeah, didn't Rudy get popped for embezzlement? I don't know. I could see it. Rudy is just, I don't know. He's just one of those America's guy used it to describe Mike Eruzione from the 1980 Olympic team, where they basically just guys I think of that fall in this category, like Bobby Hull with the Blackhawks was kind of that way. Johnny Rogers, come on. But like somebody called Bill Simmons called Eruzione America's house guest. Like they're just trying to live a life, giving speeches and autographing shit, and are just trying to stay on scholarship as long as they're trying to stay on scholarship, through their death. And that's Rudy. Rudy's trying never to work another day in his life except for showing up places to be Rudy and maybe write another. I don't know. He strikes me as the type that would have had ghostwriters write about 8 different Rudy books and try to sell them and all that. So here, Joel Tilson says he got in trouble with the SEC, defrauded investors with a pump and dump scheme. That sounds just Rudy as hell. Yeah, pay me. Like Ric Flair, he paid $380,000 back to settle with the SEC. Yeah, Rudy. At the time, I thought they tried to blame, Sacco says, the Poblagia thing on our field turf. Could be that some of that artificial turf. That's when like those cleats would just sit in there and stick. Our turf now is called something else. I always do like our kind of how to watch pregame article, and I'll always put the field surface, and ours is called, it's not field turf, it's some other like Hallis turf or some Hellas turf or something like that, like HELLAS. So it's some different turf than field turf, which I think we were the first stadium to have actual field turf. I was at the Big 12 championship. That game upset a lot of Texas fans that day. Good for you. Now I saw that like certain family members that owned a certain Italian restaurant upset a lot of Texas fans a little too much and ended up kind of getting their clocks clean for it. And even Nebraska fans in the area kind of said it's like, we hate Texas too, but our boys were were asking for everything they got. They couldn't really fault the Texas guys for loosening their jawbones a little. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That I was actually thinking that. Yeah, the Count of Monte Cristo. And in this one, like the Count of Monte Cristo was not a vampire, but apparently whoever ran the ran the Husker vision, thought the count was had like got Monte Cristo and Dracula switch, so they had Monte Cristo wearing like a Dracula cape or something, and like oh no, God, it was awful. Joel Tilson still feeling the non-called. There's no way it's anything else. The uncalled face mask on Eric Crouch that turned his head 180 degrees. Let's see. Do we realize that there's an entire it says Kenny EIEIO. There's an entire generation being raised that Nebraska is a basketball school and Indiana is a football school. Well, let's not get crazy yet, even though we're off to a fine start this season. I think what they're learning right now is Nebraska is a volleyball school, and now Indiana is a football school. Hard to say. Yeah, I remember like on the Joel Klatt show, he was just going. Now, 2 years ago, what if somebody tells you that Indiana is going to beat Ohio State, undefeated Indiana is going to beat Ohio State in the conference championship game and be the number 1 seed in the 12-team football playoff, and you're going to be going, oh, kid, I'm no idiot. I don't take bets like that. Yeah, and this is probably Aaron Cade. Hey, Aaron, like saying to that, going, what kind of tomfoolery is going on here? And that's a way to announce the age. But I wish Miley was here. She loves it. She calls them old people talk when John says things like egad, and it doesn't get any older than tomfoolery. I love it. And here it's like Gary's saying they had a players committee and threw Evans off the team. It caused some problems with the players who didn't think it was fair. That Crouch ran off pouting and Solich chased after him. Well, that's the thing, though, is that is like I said, it wasn't just Evans, because like Evans didn't run off. He brought in the family to. I think there was an uncle that was just out of control. We can only take anyone's word for it because that was, as I understand it, that was a closed door meeting. So Frank threw him out, and then the team threw him off, I guess. Yeah, 97. Oh, yeah, we did that. Shutout against Phil Snow's Arizona State defense was 96. Wow. Okay. If that is true, nice find there, Kenny EIEIO. If Phil Snow was the Arizona State defensive coordinator in '96, then I feel like he owes us a shutout performance now on the good guys' side. Boom, ba boom. Fred wants now that Aaron's here. Fred wants to tag him in and take a breather. Oh, speak for yourselves. Let's see. Getting down here to it. Yeah, Huskers men. Hey, man, winning that crown. We are still holding the nation's longest unbeaten streak. We have the nation's longest unbeaten streak in basketball. Entered the polls at 23. I was hanging around because we were told we were going to get more players, but I wanted to sneak out of there before basketball. But instead, here comes Fred rolling in, and I realized, instead of like another 5-minute player interview, I probably got 30 minutes of Fred. But it is fun to listen to Fred. And let's see, Nebraska men's basketball has learned to play defense. He remember those first 3 years, he just tried to put together these all-star teams of offense. And then he saw that wasn't working. He was having to like basically rebuild the roster every year. And then he said, okay, let's go the tough guy route. Let's be the kind of team that's just get the guys that are going to outwork people. You got guys like Sam Greisel, Josiah Alec. His kid is a guy that just leaves it all on the floor. And Fred's had a winner now for a few years. Was it 2 years ago when they lost in the conference tournament final, I believe, and then last year they won the crown. And we could all make fun of the crown, but that was like an NIL. That was like had a winners NIL had an NIL winners purse. And so you got, I think, a field that was a little stronger than the NIT. And I can't remember who it was. It was somebody responding, like when we were saying we're announcing, here's where they're going, playing in the first game of the crown. Somebody responds, goes, well, they're just going to go win this whole damn thing. And I remembered that even then going, he's probably not wrong, because Nebraska's gone on that NIT run more than once. Yeah, Frost was 96. We got smoke shut out at ASU, and collectively all our hearts sank, and we knew the run was over. It wasn't over. We won in 97. Bite your tongue, high mountain guy. But yeah, we got smoked. But the thing was, I came out of that game. Well, first of all, annoyed. Like, here's the team from Phoenix, and I remember those guys were, kind of ahead of their time and faking injuries. They were getting cramps and then just laying on the field for as long as they'd let them. Whereas Nebraska guys were getting a cramp or two, but they're hopping off. But yeah, it just kept failing offensively. But I came out of there really impressed with Scott Frost's just kind of his confidence, his cool demeanor. That he never really lost it or anything like that. And I do remember the one that impressed me was there was one where he was like calling out an audible, and I can't remember, was it Aaron Taylor? I think they had moved to center, and he was in the gun, and Aaron Taylor just fires the snap right by him, thinking he'd called for it. And here comes Arizona State, and that ball's bouncing around funny, and Frost just calmly scoops it up, tucks it, and then just goes down, protects it instead of trying to, oh my God, I got to try and make something happen, which nothing good ever happens when you try to do that when you're under pressure in your own end zone. Yeah, I came away going, well, this kid looks like he can hold it together. So yeah, I remember that game. I had friends that went to it and said, apparently, like, oh God, who was it? Bruce Snyder was the Arizona State coach, and he was so mad that Nebraska scored a touchdown in the second half to beat him 77-28 when it was 63-28 or 63-14 at halftime. And 14 points in the second half. They took it easy on him. But, we've told the whole story about how what was supposed to be a quick out turned into an out and up. And so Snyder had just been getting their fans worked into a frenzy about what an asshole they were. And so he had that city, from what I understand from my friends that were there, said they were just trying to get to a bar where the Nebraska people were without getting in a fight. They said the Arizona fans there, State fans there, were not just a few bad apples, but a lot of them were just out of control. So, yeah, can we play? I think we brought him back a few years later and slapped a win on him when Fred was playing, or not Fred was playing, when Frank was coaching. Oh God. Let's see what else we got here. We got Fred and Aaron talking about. I know that time's getting short in tonight's episode when they're talking about Greek fucking warriors or something. Yeah, Kane, I thought Thermopylae was the VD version of Monopoly that Frost played versus Pritchett. Okay. Here we go. Kenny, this is if you want to be my best friend. Fuck Notre Dame and their whiny fans. Yeah, Notre Dame fans, it's unbelievable. It's just Karen at the diner. Who's the manager? Excuse me? How dare you? Do you know who I am? Yeah, it's a total do you know who I am? It has nothing to do. They know they got beat head to head by the team next to them in the rankings. They can talk about Utah was behind, suddenly they're next to them. It's like, yeah, the best measure is you guys actually played. They beat you. You had your own destiny in your hands. It's not like something funky happened. You got to realize that all the games count. I know when it doesn't work for you, you don't want them to, but yeah, this was a team, like I said, didn't go to bowl games at all, and then they insisted on either the BCS game or or a New Year's Day bowl. And there's a stretch. It's from I want to say it was for about a 25-year stretch from like the 90s or maybe like the 90s through about when they did it through about 2020 or something. And you take all the like final as a Final Four team at least. So BCS, like last year's would have counted. But you still add that game in, and all those games they were in, New Year's Day bowls, BCS games, or CFP semifinal games, they lost these games by like an average of 18 or 19 points. So they, overall, they got no business being in these games. I remember it was like a 7-4 Notre Dame team, because they were Notre Dame, 7-4, but saying we'll only go to a New Year's Day bowl, like one of the majors. They were taking them, and 2 years 2 years. I don't know if they were in a row, but they were pretty close. And one of them was Notre Dame, like 7-4, goes up against like an 11-1 Colorado team, or 10-1, and they get beat like 42-20. And then they do it again. They just don't belong there. And then it's not close at all. It's a 42-20, makes it sound closer than it was. And then they play Oregon State. No, not Mike Riley. Many people think that they had these great 10-11 game winning seasons for 4 years. No, that was what's his name? Dennis Erickson, not Mike Riley. And he had their two top receivers were Chad Ochocinco and TJ Hushmanzada, and they lose like 38-7. And then the funniest thing was Notre Dame being Notre Dame, and how dare you? It's us. How dare you? I think it was Chad Ochocinco was running one in, does the old drop the ball on the 1 yard line, and then they allowed the touchdown. And Notre Dame after the game, oh, it's a game changer. This is so wrong on all levels. And it's like, you lost 38-7. Oh, and then who was the bomb? The quarterback who bombed, the LSU quarterback who got drafted first by the Raiders. So he bombs as an NFL, Jamarcus Russell. So he bombs as an NFL player, but he was still, I think, Heisman Trophy winner at LSU, and then LSU destroys Notre Dame in like a New Year's Day game. So they just insist on being in these games. Then I think after a while, then they at least started taking the lower bowl games. But it's just a pattern of shit with them where they act like their crap doesn't stink. That they're just above everybody else. And their Holtz teams literally, they were investigated, and they gave them the loss of institutional control, but then just put them on probation for 2 years. And Notre Dame kind of lucked out there for two reasons. One, we're about 7 years away from SMU getting a 2-year ban from playing, period. And now they've had a team for 5 years, and they're just getting their asses kicked still. Like, there's no hope in sight 5 years later. And apparently what the NCAA had done, I had heard, and history seems to bear it out, is that they, naturally, as people in power, and you can see it a lot today, you can never admit you made a mistake. And so they never wiped that rule off the books, the death penalty. It was just agreed quietly, it's never being handed out again. No one's getting the death penalty. So I said there were two reasons. One is, they've seen what's happening with SMU. They're not going to hand it out, but they hit Notre Dame fairly severe. I can't remember. It might have been a 2-year postseason ban, which is a chunk of change out of your pocket. And the other reason, though, is it's Notre Dame, and you're not going to do that. In '82, they wouldn't have done it to Notre Dame. They wouldn't have had the balls. So that's just what it is with Notre Dame. We get our way. When they formed the BCS, it goes to 4 teams. Well, if Notre Dame is if they do this, then they get placed here. And it was just, there was always the special Notre Dame rules, and there's still special Notre Dame rules, like they've got the one now. Now, I would love it if it was a little bit of vindictiveness, and because if it's what they did in the first year of the CFP, where they fired the shot over the bow of the Big 12, and specifically TCU and Baylor, when they were 4th and 5th, bumped them back, moved Ohio State up to 4, said, you got to join your conference has to have a title game. So I wonder if this is another, they're not going to say it out loud, but I wonder if that was the shot over the bow, that you join a conference, or we're going to make it tough for you to get in. But then they've got a rule already in there that as long as they're ranked in the top 12, they get in starting next year. I don't know why you would have made that rule, unless they just it was one of those they made after the season got going for the next season, which maybe, I don't know. But yeah, then they make another, let's accommodate Notre Dame and encourage them to keep being an independent. And they'll never have to play in a title game, even though we've used the you got to play in a title game. I mean, they'd already given up that logic, because then a few years later, remember, Alabama loses to LSU. They finish second in their damn division. They don't even make the SEC title game. But this time, it's the eye test. The eye test says Alabama's great, and they get into the 4-team playoff. Even though not only did they not go to a conference title game, they didn't even win a division. So it was just whatever. It's just whatever the committee wants to do to get the most money in. But that was interesting. I thought because of that, because of this weird power Notre Dame wields over everyone, even though they haven't won a national title since what, late 80s, maybe early 90s, or maybe 88 was the last one. So they haven't been relevant as a consistent, like, top 5-10 team forever. But they're still treating them, not quite, but let's say treats them a little bit like the Big Ten treats Ohio State, Michigan. You don't have to play on Fridays, that sort of thing. They get special considerations. All right, let's see. Satterfield's contract says James Boardman comes up at the end of the month. Does he take a pay cut and stay as a tight ends coach, or is he gone? Well, I'll tell you this. If he gets a better job for a lot more money, I think he's gone. I don't, I would think the only way he remains as a tight end coach on a tight end coach's salary, and he does enjoy it here. It sounds like it. It sounds like he really does believe in it, enjoys it, enjoys the team. But it's, let's say you get like a lower end offensive coordinator job that pays, 700 or 800,000 somewhere else. I don't know if that's happening, but are you really going to take tight end coach's job? What's that? 300,000-400,000? I don't know. But are you going to take less to stay here? Now, to be honest, I mean, I would if I really liked it there. Holy shit, 300 grand a year. Sure, I'll take 300 grand a year. I could be very happy on that, especially in a place where if that option was still open to him. Let's put it this way: he's not being let go. Rule did say today he's not that nobody else is getting fired. The way he described it was on the lower end of things. He says we might still bring in a few guys, and it turns out they brought in former South Carolina offensive line coach, I believe, but I guess he was part of a group of them that got fired midway through the season by South Carolina. And so they don't, and I think they even said they're not sure what his role will be yet, but he's an amazing recruiter. And so they might have brought him in just on that end, and we'll find, it's like, we'll find you a position to help with, maybe you could help with Geep, but you're going to be kind of you're going to be our John Blake, the assistant coach who's the recruiting madman. Oh, I got to share this with you. Hold on. Two funny things at the press conference today, like genuine laughter. First, so Matt Rule's up there, and I had known this because I was talking about, in the middle of the day Saturday, here's Raiola let go, and then 2 hours later, hey, we got his replacement already. So obviously, everybody, the fan, Rule said he talked to the team about Donovan. Said a lot of them were really sorry to see him go. The player, regardless of what you think, players really liked him. He really liked him. And if you want, it doubled down that, because remember, we hated the buddy system. Callahan was the worst at it. Cosgrove, you're sticking around. Frost kept that Verduzco quarterbacks coach around. Bo was making Papuchis a P5 linebacker coach and then a defensive coordinator, just like 2 and 3 years removed from being a grad assistant. And it wasn't great. But just, nope, handcuffing myself to my buddy. Rule has Satterfield's a buddy. Now, gave him the option, he took it, but no, you can't be offensive coordinator anymore. He's admitting, hey, these guys aren't doing the job, and not just I love Donovan. You can tell that he has a genuine affection for Donovan. Raiola says this is one of the hardest working guys, fantastic guy. Had said the same thing about Butler, and with Butler, with both of them, you can tell this is not a guy, reading a release in a monotone, just could not give a shit. You can tell that he really likes these guys, but is sending the message loud and clear. But if I don't feel you're getting it done to our standard, then I've got to make changes, and I can't let. He said I can't let my friendships outweigh the needs of the program. So that's a good thing. So anyway, the funny stuff. So I found out in the middle of all this Saturday that he was actually in Omaha because I was watching the game in good old Tiger Tom's, and Maura, the Iowa fan, came over to tell me she saw Matt Rule at her niece's basketball game that day. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, one daughter's like, I think 11 or 12, the other one's younger. So Steve Sipple, love Sip, great guy. So he asked him, so did you know any of the girls that did you know one of the girls at that basketball game? And Rule just looks at him and goes, well, yeah, my daughters. And he goes, it's kind of a little funny if I'm just hanging around like young girls' basketball games, man. And you can see Sybil just kind of go like this. And the place was just breaking up. And it was like, yeah, not just hanging around watching underage girls play basketball because I that guy I just gave him the look. So that was hilarious. And then the other one was Andrew Marshall came in, one of the two players they brought in to talk. The other was Luke Lindenmeyer, and Marshall was at Idaho as a freshman when Orich was at Idaho, and was coached by him, and said really liked him. So, and he was describing, like, he starts. You could tell he remembered him well. You can always tell when they ask a kid about a former coach or player or something, that because if they really like him, they just break out in a smile right away, and you can tell this guy's got stories. So about Orich, what was it? Let's see. He had said, like, oh yeah, he's a lot of fun. He said he's rambunctious, man. He's funny. He's wild. And someone asks, like, they go, well, is he wild like Mike Eckler? And he stops and like kind of just smiles real big, starts shaking his head. He goes, that's a different kind of wild. Like that was, yeah, a genuine reporters, and just laughing their asses off. Yeah, that Mike Eckler. Oh, dude, that's a different kind of wild. So that was pretty funny. My guess is if Satterfield gets a better,
he takes it for more money. If he doesn't, Rules,
he's not firing anybody. So if he doesn't get offered something bigger, maybe a chance at an offensive coordinator at a like lower half school or 1AA school, and he decides he wants to get back on a track, get his reputation back, and try making a run at that again. Sure, he probably takes that. I don't know, but he might just really, if he's invited to stay on as tight ends coach, which apparently he has been, he's not getting fired. Like I said, if that contract 1.4 mil, he's not getting anymore as a tight ends coach. So, but I get the feeling if nothing better comes along, or if that's not what he's looking for, then I believe we've already been told he'll be sticking around. So there you go. We may find EJ Barthel is a better running back coach than we give credit for. I disagree with that only because I've been giving EJ Barthel a lot of credit for a while. I've always liked him as a running back coach. I feel like he finally got to paint a masterpiece this year. Let's put it that way. But Kenny, for anybody who isn't really giving him enough credit, then yes, he is a better coach than they are giving him credit for. Strength and conditioning got a big raise today. I don't know. We'll see. Thing is, it all comes back to that defensive line, but it's like I got to look beyond that position, and it may not have been a strength issue when you got smaller guys, because he did put 30 pounds on Keanu Davis, 25 or 30 pounds on Keanu Davis, and Keanu Davis end of the year you could tell this guy's taking steps. Justin Evans taking steps at the end of the year, and when you're doing that, at the end of the year, that's when you're making your move, is when everybody's in hang in there mode. That's when I think your strength and conditioning. The Emmett Johnson from last year to this year, I think that's his masterpiece in strength and conditioning. That was a different looking dude this year. And Corey, yeah. So because that at first I'm like, God, but we weren't that strong on the defensive line. Now the offensive line, I tell you, even though pass blocking was an issue until like the last 4 or 5 games, which what they did improve. And also I think they might have been maybe play calling a little better, not calling for plays for him to be back in the pocket forever, but still it improved. Geez. What am I trying to say here? The offensive line was a very good run blocking offensive line. There was a chart that came out. I tweeted it out about 2 weeks ago, and it had like along the bottom line, that was your average yards by the line before contact. So that's basically the push. and Nebraska's was one of the top ones on on running plays. The there was like 2.4 yards per average before your runner got contacted, and then on the other side was the runs after contact. And Emmett's was good, but it was good. The line's push number was better. So again, maybe you got to give part of that credit to your guy that just got his raise, I guess. Sacco, beware the Ives of December. Well, he might be doing it in March. When's the combine? It might be the Ives of. Well, no, he's still on the roster. Never mind. You can tell when I'm tired. I did have a chance. I was up at like 5:30 this morning, down in Lincoln, and then back in town. And this was one of those like kind of tired days. It's not as busy as like in season. I didn't have to go down yesterday or anything, but man, about 4:30. I'm ready for a nap. I took like 15 minutes, but now I'm powering through a little. So if I get a little silly, y'all know why now. Sometimes I get silly. Let's see. I hope they part. Here's somebody. Sacco just telling Borden, I hope they part ways or gently part ways or abruptly. HH did okay. Carter Nelson was invisible, and so really we had Lindenmeyer, not worth one. No, but he's not going to be paid. 1.4 mil was being kept around, on his salary and changing jobs, and that now, if he sticks around, I would be. I don't think there's flabbergasted's not a strong enough word, but yeah, that's the thing. He can always choose to leave. Yeah, I guess they probably typed that. And we already talked about that. So let's see. 2001 Colorado game was a disaster for the defense. That was Craig Bowles' shit pile, because that was when they were just running right up the middle, because we had our Russians like 3 yards outside of the tackles. Our tackles were like between their guards and tackles, and he had like 245-pound Barrett Rude over their center. It was 310 pounds, and they were just running all over that. Just that, and Bowl. The fans knew it. Fans got on Bowl for that one, and Bowl never really forgave him. He doesn't really want to talk about it. He's still, because he got fired, and I think he was like, he held a grudge about that, which was weird because, well, what did you think would happen? Now, I wrote an article about it last year. About how, look, they can talk 62-36 and that 26-point victory all they want is, destroyed Nebraska. Well, guess what? We still had winning records for the majority of like the 20 seasons after that. Now, and we were, in my mind by then, even though we're going to the title game that year, we're off the perch. There just wasn't anybody near as good as Miami, and we're about to lose Crouch, so we're already off the perch. But I thought I made a damn good case. Now, you want to know a defeat that took a team's ass out, 37-3 in the final game. What year was that? With Gary Barnett, when Colorado had won the North, already 17-point favorites. We blow them out 37-3. They go on to have 2 winning seasons in the next 20. Texas got a hold of them the next week, beat them 70-3. And I didn't realize that. Listening to Klatt today, he was the quarterback on that team that got beat 70-3. And yeah, they lose those 2 games and they go straight to irrelevance and they fucking stay there. And I'm talking losing record. It like literally losing records 18 out of 20 years. 37-3 did far more damage to Colorado than 62-36 did to Nebraska. Read it if you want to go back and find just, Andy Ketterson, Corn Nation, Colorado. That would probably be the Google search. And yeah, I stand by it. We did way more to their psyche than they did to ours. And yeah, because then after that you're getting the old oh shit. Who is it? Hawkins. This ain't intramurals, brother. Yeah, this ain't let your fucking son start either, brother. A Texas site that I wrote for that started some Big 12 like writing sites before I found my way to SB Nation and Corn Nation. And I remember a Texas guy writing about doing like preseason reviews for all the Big 12 teams, and he was funny. Texas guy aside, these guys were pretty damn funny. And he started going, well, and Guy Hawkins thought it'd be, or Dan Hawkins thought it'd be a good idea to hand the keys to the Cadillac to his son Guy, and Guy just immediately took that sumbitch out and wrapped it around a light pole or something. And so yeah, let's get a little little abuse on Colorado, and while we're at it, that's really working out well with Dion, isn't it? Yeah, he bitching about Rule. Go take a look at Dion. Can't do what 4-8 and getting beat 50 something to 53-7 by Utah in the Powder Puff Conference there. Yeah, there's a good name for the Craig Bowl defense, the Greg Boliole defense. What else we got? Yeah, this sounds 100% true from Sack. Johnny Rogers. When I was in college, I wanted to get his autograph at J.C. Penney's. Had to work. I was mad. My dad, fuck, he'll be signing shit for 100 years, kid. Your dad ain't wrong. I used to work for a guy. It was like a sports fan distributorship. So you go into a store and see the corn heads, the bobbleheads, the lamps, trash cans, helmets. We sold that stuff to stores all over. And Johnny Rogers was always wanting to sign something, and he was wanting to buy helmets to take to signings, but not want to pay for them up front. And because it was hell, I guess, it's just hell trying to chase him down. Remember, I'm not just being mean here. Remember the whole snafu when he had somebody who'd won a small claims judgment against him. And so he just kind of stayed out of Omaha with anything valuable for years. And this guy heard he was going to be back in town with his Heisman signing stuff. So he called the sheriffs. It was probably 8-9 years later. And they showed up and impounded the Heisman until Johnny paid this guy off. And Johnny's only comment on that was, man, I thought the statute of limitations was up. So he was absolutely aware he owed this dude money. But thought, and I guess that's something is that those judgments don't come with a time limit. It's not a crime on it's not like a crime where they have limits. You can only go after someone for this many years after a crime. No, this is like the judgment's been issued and it is out there until you make good on it. So anyway, yeah, we were watching the spring game one year. When it was on the NFL Network, and with my friend that owned this business, another buddy of mine comes over to his house to watch that, and then they're at halftime, and there's Johnny up in the booth, and they're like, and by the way, we're coming right back with Johnny Rogers right after this commercial break. And my buddy Vando out loud just goes, hell, he's pushing something. And my friend's like, why do you say that? And he's like, you just wait. And they come back from halftime and they ask him, hey, relive that punt return against Oklahoma and all that. And then, well, Johnny, what brings you here today? And he's like, well, I got a new tabletop book. And he does. He's selling some tabletop book of photos. And fan was like, I told you. And my other buddy's like, God, you got to be kidding me. How did you know that? He's like, it's all he does. So, yeah, I saw that. That's a good story. Yeah, tight ends did pretty good. They were even calling Lindenmeyer. I know Holgerson was calling Lindenmeyer Raiola's security blanket, like the guy he always trusted when the first three reads weren't there. Can you honestly say, Granddad, God, Pearson will not let this Harburg thing die? Yes, I've seen them throw. I can honestly say they're better than Harburg. They both just better. But I mean, not necessarily stronger arms, but more accurate, smoother, more touch. I mean, they're not Heisman candidates, but yes, I can honestly say they're better. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, that's where I'm going to kind of leave it with Harburg. Gary, where to find us if they come back. I'm likely doing a year-end show. Well, we'll see. Last year I was so wiped out after I got back from New York. That last Tuesday, I'm like, everybody saw the game. Screw it, I'm done. I'm resting up this week. Maybe we'll talk a little football here when I'm doing my first Husker Heat softball show, and we'll bring up a little football there. But if Harburg comes in there and plays quarterback, and it's been this cat and mouse game, then you can crow, "I told you so," and I will just laugh. The only thing is, it's like if you start Harburg, just as some sort of gimmick. And Lateef was hurt. If I grab Stead or Dabble, I guess not all the threats of what they do, just by God, what a kick in the stomach. It's like, geez, they kept telling us we were better than this. Anyway, I'm done with Harburg and quarterback for the night, but you have that promise, Pierre. Sacco, no, Texas cleaned my clock. Ooh, but 99, I had one wanting to kill me, a Texas fan. 3 other Texas fans dragged him away. Well, good for them. I heard from friends and this is like 2 groups, 2 different places, but around Texas fans that said they were actually really nice. And this was them getting beaten up too. And the oldie story that the fight was the Nebraska fans being the jerks. Yeah, you can get Johnny's autograph right now. Oh, there you go. Texas 99 Big 12 game. Texas fan asked me when we last won a title. I said 2 years ago. When did you all win a title? Oh yeah, Nixon was president, and Nixon was actually at the Pole Bowl that year. Dan Jenkins always called those 1 versus 2 games the Pole Bowls, and that was the Arkansas 2, Texas 1 in '69. I think it was '69, and James Street was the Texas quarterback, and it was at Fayetteville, and Nixon went to the game, and the Hogs led most of the game, and then James Street led the Texas comeback at the end. Another classic. Jenkins wrote the '70 Sports Illustrated article, the Game of the Century article, was '71, whichever. But again, the one against Oklahoma, was it 38-35 or 38-31? I always forget the final. I mean, I was 7, but I wasn't a Nebraska fan yet. But he wrote that Sports Illustrated article, and then he also wrote the Texas Arkansas. And I just remember they were talking about just how just the disdain that Texas had for Arkansas, and why they said one cheerleader going in could be heard to say, "Well, them Arkansas are nothing but a bunch of hillbillies that sell jelly down by the highway," or something like that. Oh, geez. Hold on just a moment here. Tried to cover up the mic, so hopefully that wasn't too big, too loud. Let's see. We're back to we covered that game pretty well. Back to Plummer. I think he only threw for like 160 something yards in that game, but I think about 140 of them were to Keith Poole. I'd have to go back and look at the box score, and they made it sound like he'd just thrown for 420 on us. Let's see. Yeah, when you lose 19-0, that's not your defense's fault. Now we're all over the place here. That's okay. We're the 2-hour plus mark. I'll take a look here. See how far we got to go. Okay. Got through quite a few tonight, though. I'm glad I did this tonight. Why in the hell? Okay, I've got an answer for this because I had to spend a lot of time explaining this to people. Why in the hell Tulane and James Madison in the playoffs? They will be blasted. And what I got, even from some more idiot Notre Dame fans, how could the committee put these guys in ahead of Notre Dame? It's like, well, because the committee didn't, stupid. Last year, you had the top 4 conference champs in of the top 4 out of the Power 4, and then the highest ranked conference champion in the group of 5. But then they did the stupid thing there, and they made the conference champions the top 4 seeds. It wrenches everything. Look, you've gotten the conference champs in. Okay, leave it at that. So they do that this year again. Conference champs in, but instead of Power 4 and the best of the group of 5, they just go the highest ranked 5. See? So that's where the trouble comes. Now, you got Indiana in, Georgia in. Let's see. Who was? Let's see. SEC, Big 10, the ACC, and the Big 12. So Big 12, Texas Tech in, and they were actually moving up to 4 or 5 on their own. We'll see now if that translates once they start meeting Big 10 or SEC teams. But so there's your first 3. But now here's the wrench. The ACC title game is between number 18 Virginia unranked 7-5 Duke, and winning this game isn't going to get them ranked at 8-5. So they're and in their hubris, and I think I talked about it. I already went into the details, but Duke gets in because of weird tiebreaker rules in the ACC. The committee is just going, please, if there's any higher power above, for all of your sakes, please let Virginia win and just make it simple. And then it'll basically be because what they did this year, top 5, they go, then it'll be all Power 4 champions. And what would have been James Madison, or was it Tulane? Tulane, I think, might have been higher than Madison. Let's just say it. I'm not sure, but then let's just say for the sake of argument, those 4 in Madison, we're probably avoiding some problems there, because then I think you've only got, you're still going to have problems, because you're going to have 2 out of the top. It's still just going to be the top 10, the rest of the guys in the top 10, because you're going to have 2 teams bumping 11 and 12 out. Even then, it's got to be Virginia at 18 and say Tulane at 21 or whatever. But now you've got the double rage, because now ACC's out, no conference champ in, their conference champ isn't in, and that opens the gate for, say, Tulane at 11, Madison at 12, and now somebody's getting bumped, and it ends up being Notre Dame. So then that's where you are. But those teams were not put in by the committee in that room. They were already in by the pre-established rules, but so many people thought, oh, they're selecting these guys ahead of Notre Dame. No, they're not. The rules say those 2 are already in, and as part of the first 5 entered the champions. The next ones in are the ones up to however many spots are left. Up through this year, it was number 10. So it's basically your top 10 plus Madison and Tulane. So sucks being you, man. Yeah. Don't know what to say. And the team you were up with was head to head. And I absolutely, the big, is, do you want to, this was something on a show I listened to today. It's like, do you want more transparency or less transparency? I don't think you want more. I don't think you want them detailing all the way up and then getting mad 5 straight weeks or 7 weeks instead of just once at the end. But I don't think you want less either, because that the opposite of that is, all right, you're not even getting a show or whatever. Just end of it. Boom. Here's your field, and then no explanation. Bang. That's what we decided. And I don't know. They do a lot of talking about that in the basketball tournament. Who's filling those last in spots and whatnot. I mean, they just announced it, and I'm not sure if they really talk about why these 3 or 4 teams didn't get in. And Joel Klatt was funny. I know I'm talking about him tonight, but this is one of his more entertaining episodes. And he compared it to, say, making a hot dog. Said, we all love hot dogs, right? We just want that hot dog on the bun, the mustard, ketchup, whatever you want on it. We don't want to see how that hot dog's made. He said he's actually for a little less transparency. He goes, it's just going to be ugly. Just give us the teams, give us our playoff, and don't have to say, well, we left this team out, but now they're next to each other and we're doing this, and then coming up with weird shit for Alabama, but not applying it to BYU. So he's like, just a little less. Just give us our hot dog. We don't care how it's made. Just is it the best analogy? Probably not, but it was fun for me. But anyway, that's why in the hell Tulane and James Madison are in. They're automatically in as higher ranked conference champs than the ACC's champion. And by the way, it's like, hey, if Miami wins a game, or somebody actually looks at these tiebreaker, it doesn't take that much. You go look at tiebreakers, and we had to do this a lot for hockey, where you're going to a bigger tournament and there's 16 teams and there's 4 pods of 4, and they're playing these 3 games. And then, and of course you're going to have ties all over the place when you're just playing 3 games and then play like a semifinal. So you're playing like 5 games maybe. But we always would walk in and before it started, look at the tiebreakers and go, how does this go wrong? And it's usually pretty easy to go, if this happens, this tiebreaker is going to look really stupid. If this, and we're doing it just so we don't get that worked up if it happens. We've already seen it. We already know what it is. If there's game adjustments we can make with like that tiebreaker in mind, we know to make them. And at that point, they're applying to everybody. So let's not go nuts if that weird tiebreaker happens, bumps us out, whatever. So we just did it not to make ourselves crazy. So, I mean, did they not do that enough in the ACC? I don't know. Interesting. I love me some chaos though, so I enjoyed everything. When Duke won, I was overjoyed. I'm like, this is gonna. What's the expression? Fuck shit up. All right, let's see. Um, I hope USC cancels Notre Dame games. That would be funny. That would, yeah. Their strength of schedule this year was like 40 something, and so was Miami's. So I'm like, yeah, yeah. It's like you're trying to cherry pick this shit here and there, but you guys are right next to each other with the same record, played about the same schedule strength and all that, but you met head to head. They won, you lost. Call wine 1-1. Um, uh, 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 Here's why didn't we hire Dennis Erickson? Well, that was when I think we might have still been in the Osborne years, maybe that point. That was early, maybe that was early '90s when Oregon State got good for a few years. So we were still in Frankie world then, I'm afraid. Oh, I tell you what, we're at 2 hours 15 minutes in. Let me see what we got on the bottom here. Oh God, Stephen from Joe. That's what they said about Bob Diaco's defense when Mike Riley hired him. Back in the day. His defenses were going to do this and that versus Big Ten. Well, let's get something clear here. Sean Eichhorst hired Bob Diaco. He forced that hire on. It was like beta weakling Sean Eichhorst forced on even more beta weakling Mike Riley, that Diaco. And then just one of the most shameful moments in Nebraska athletic department history. I think they were practicing on the football field, as the story goes, and Eichhorst had all the other coaches come up there, and you just think of it specifically with John Cook standing there. He announced it's like and also talking about like crapping all over your head coach too. Again, just shitting all over Riley, who meekly takes it. I would have loved to see what would have happened if like he did. Well, if somehow but Diaco gets hired, because Bo would have laughed in his face if Eichhorst ever tried to tell him who to hire. But yeah, in front of Mike Riley, he tells these other coaches, Bob Diaco here is very likely the best actual coach on this campus, just the finest mind. What's going through John Cook's mind? I mean, he's a pretty humble dude. I mean, he doesn't go bragging himself up. But if I'm John Cook and I've got some self confidence in my head, I'm just going, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Bob Diaco? And then the genius Bob Diaco went up there. I remember we went and watched volleyball earlier that day, and then Arkansas State. And Bob Diaco, the genius, they just ran those bubble and wide receiver screens left and right. I don't think one gained less than 7 yards, and they were just going for like 9 to 25 yards every time. And the genius just had no answer. The genius Bob Diaco. So that seems like a good one. That seems like a good one to sign off on. Joel Tilson mentioned Yeepoid running game offense will terrorize the Big Ten. Let's hope so. I think EJ and Barthel and Holgerson, if we can take the training wheels back off Holgerson, that I think is an important thing, because everybody talks about Matt Rule game decisions, like in-game decisions. And I think he's got to let Dana Holgerson cook. Dana Holgerson's not going to, I tell people he ran the air raid offense as Texas Tech's offensive coordinator for 2 years. And after that, he had high scoring offenses, but they weren't air raid. They were always like 150 to 180 yards rushing a game. Like Kendall Hunter gained 1,500 yards to Oklahoma State. That there wasn't anybody running for 1,000 yards on Texas Tech. That those teams averaged like 60 yards, 70 yards a game rushing, and that's just because eventually no one expected them to do it. So anyway, let's hope so. Let's see. I'd say we're about done here. We are about done, and man, I was at 110, and you guys upped your game. You kept it coming. It's like all of a sudden I'm just rolling with it, and we're over 2 hours, and that was fun as hell. I expect to be back here next Tuesday night. maybe, yeah, we'll just do this again Tuesday night, because we'll still be a couple weeks out from the bowl, so not really time. Yeah, I like to save breaking down the other team for the week before. So let's just do this again next week. Get your comments ready. Be back. We had a good crowd tonight. I was kind of surprised. I thought maybe we lose everybody, but no, good show. I was trying to think if Rule said anything else. Check the tweets, like the stuff that hits, like Terry Braden was fired as well. After 1 year as the D-line coach, and that tells me it's like, look, we bitch, we see what's going on. So does Matt Rule, and I'm not saying he listens, and he's not cutting anybody loose because of the fans, but he's seeing the things we see, and he's saying it's not good enough. And I just love hearing the program needs to come before your friendships or your buddies. It's the world we live in, especially now, man. You've got to keep up with the Joneses. So I like that he's making moves. Yeah, and we're all kind of looking at the Orich hire, since this is only his second year as a defensive coordinator. But apparently he had it on good authority from people he trusted. Get this guy now. And he's, I mean, San Diego State was sixth in the country in total defense. There's worse guys to pick up. Tell you that. Let me take a quick look. Fired anyone else? Oh, I just wanted to mention, because we didn't really do a lot of is Dylan or is he not, and I kind of done responding to all the haters that know he's gone, who don't know shit any more than I do. I'll tell you this is like Sam McCown asked him about BQ, and McCown asked him about Dylan today, and and Rule just gave me the answer that I kind of knew he was going to give. I'm not talking to you about their futures. That's their decision. It's not mine. Sometimes it is. Obviously, this time it won't be. But he's like, but no, that's if anything happens, that's up to them. But no, I don't discuss that. Well, I think I had the way around that, or at least, for right now, because I use this example in a tweet, and I've used it before. But I said last year, Carson Beck, gets his elbow busted on the last play of the first half of the SEC title game. And Gunnar Stockton comes in. They're down 6-3. Gunnar leads them to a win. Starting quarterback going forward, because they thought Beck was going into the draft. Well, Beck basically just goes to Georgia right after that game. And no one. Supposedly the staff never heard from him. He went to went to a doctor in California, didn't share. It just didn't talk to the team. He was just done. And then enters the portal, ends up at Miami, and just did it, I guess, with like next to no contact with Georgia. I understand. Now, so there's a behavior of a guy who's transferring, right? So, but I just asked, I said, okay, just because Dana mentioned this after Dylan was injured, that he was doing this, is he still fully involved in practices, team meetings, just all team activities, just still functioning as the team, and in the above and beyond way that he'd been doing it since, like spending a lot of time helping TJ, apparently, like really just kind of took him under his wing and trying to mentor TJ as well. And so, yeah, and he said, absolutely, said the only time he'll miss anything is if his rehab clashes. But no, he goes, other than that, yeah, with the team all the time. He says he's really learning to get around on the little scooter you saw him on at the Iowa game, and he's starting to really zip around on that. But no, if he's leaning against leaving, and he's still got people going, that don't mean shit. He could still take off after that and do it. And somebody tried to say you don't do that, you don't get your NIL, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure you got guys that bang out left and right. You still get all your NIL. Let's say it goes through the bowl game. I'm not sure how it's paid, because a lot of guys can opt out, because literally you see seniors opt out because they can't, because they graduated. They are doing practice and bowl time at that point on their own. I mean, not their own dime, but on their own time. They have, at that point, attended their last classes, or except for being on the team, not really a member of the university anymore, whatever. So that's why I'll see a lot of them bounce, but because they can. Anyway, if you are losing NIL, that's paid generally in chunks, and so maybe you miss your last payment or something. But yeah, all I'm saying is, sounds like he's still a full member of the team. If he's on his way out, he's not behaving like a guy who's leaving. Does that mean he's not going? No, that dude was 100% correct when he said he can bounce after that. Yeah, maybe you do just get a tweet, Nebraska, thank you for everything, but I've decided to continue and I'm entering the portal, and and maybe you get that, but man, that would feel like kind of a dirty thing to do after hanging around like you're there. I don't know if, because usually you hear that portal shit before the bowl practices start, right? I mean, last year everybody's portaling out before the bowl practice. Like if you're portaling, that's what Rule said. He's like, I'm not mad. You're Husker forever. He goes, the only thing I tell him is if you're going to do it, just do it. Just do it. Let me know. We got no problems. Because I always thought it was funny. You can't say that guys that leave are, treasonous and all that. And, I hope you screwed somewhere else. But then the guys that come in are awesome, and what a great choice you made. So that was one thing I liked, the Trev Rule. And like all the coaches had got together. I guess Trev kind of put it together. It's like, let's just make sure as coaches we're doing our best to send the message to players and just make our athletic department once a Husker, always a Husker. And if they leave, it's just with the best wishes and the best intentions. And that way you probably won't see people leaving in this bad a mood. And I think it really peaked with Allie Badenhorst when she actually stayed with Nebraska through the summer to play beach volleyball, then transferred, then goes to USC. And then when she comes back to USC, it's just standing ovation, tears, smiles and tears, just to see her back. And that to me is the way it ought to be done. No matter the reason you're leaving, because most of the reasons are more than just money. They really, I'm not saying it's never money, but a lot of the times it's more than money. It's playing time. This will be the last time for 98% of these guys they ever get to play football in pads in that joyous game. And so I want to play. I'm fine with that. If they're saying, well, you're third, fourth string here, but you never know if they're going to get injured. Okay, if you just love Nebraska that much, love you for that. But if all you want to do is, hey, I want to go to South Dakota and just play because I can play there right away and I can play my last years, love you for it. Why wouldn't you want that for someone? So, it's just one of those things where I try not to judge that too much. I don't buy it at all. The former players that, we had loyalty in our day. No, you didn't have the option in your day. Your option was no money. The scholarship, even though you're raking in the billions, and it was like I said, year suspension if you transfer. And who wants to give up? You only got 4 years left. Who wants to give up one of them? Unless you really want to play or you really have a problem with where you're at. So anyway, there's my final rant. I wish, if anyone else does transfer, but I would say practice has started. Those two guys announced it before practice because I think you don't want to play through the bowl game, especially, that you're going to turn around and move on after that game. I like the idea of doing it before. So they've got till January 6th, but I don't think we had any surprises after the Pinstripe Bowl. I think once Pinstripe Bowl rolled around, that was kind of there's our fight. There's our die on our hill with each other team, especially after all the others left. So we'll see. Maybe they're working at work. Guys believe in what they're doing, don't want to leave. I'm always going to believe the best guys. It's the Huskers, man. Come on. Wait, what was the guy said in North Dallas 40? Come on, man. I need a little team spirit. It's got to be, but it's the fourth quarter. It's got to be more about money and following the rules and all that, man. I want some John Matuzak. I want some team spirit, damn it. So on that note, thank you guys all for your team spirit. Thanks for chiming in on the comments, man. I love it. I love you guys. We will see you here next week. Geez, 2.5 hours. You guys are something. Thanks for tuning in. Go Big Red now and forever. See you next Tuesday.